as heavy or as frequent as what we've seen through today, and in fact eastern parts will be starting the day largely dry, but those showery bursts will feed further eastwards through the morning and into the afternoon. They then start to clear away towards the east and northeast, so actually western areas where we've seen the heaviest, most frequent showers through recent days, well there it will turn drier and sunnier by the middle of the afternoon, and a fair amount of sunshine for Northern Ireland, the bulk of England and Wales as well, with temperatures, well, similar to today, mid-20s in the south, high teens, low 20s further north. We start Sunday with a largely dry picture, a swathe of cloud across central areas, and most places stay dry through the bulk of the day, but across the Republic of Ireland there's likely to be some wetter weather making its way in. There's more changeable weather to come in the north in particular early next week, some heavy rain for parts of Scotland. Further south it stays drier and could turn warmer again.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's a Great British Giveaway Golden Summer Celebration. Your chance to win 2 fantastic prizes. There's an incredible £60,000 in tax-free cash. Plus, you'll also get your hands on a fine gold bar worth over £5,000. For a chance to win £60,000 in tax-free cash and a real gold bar, text GOLD to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB22 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 21st of August. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pooled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain is not just a geographical expression. We are a people bound together by history and culture that are distinctively British. Join me to celebrate our music, theatre, artworks and literature, which we can explore and enjoy together.
Everybody's welcome.
Sunday with Michael Portillo. Every Sunday at 11 a.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
Oh no, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
I think GB News is completely unique in the way that we interact with our viewers.
Our audience aren't afraid to have their say. They want their voices heard now, and they've got a channel where that can happen.
I find more and more as I'm wandering around, people come up to me and they say, we saw you on television. I say, oh yes, on what? On GB News. Hello, are you the famous Sue?
The whole crew is me here now. We came to celebrate.
It's our job to be the eyes and ears of the viewers.
They are part of the GB News family, and I'm pleased to say it's a very large family.
And if people go to the time and trouble of listening and watching, then we've got to do a good job for them.
Well, I'm here right in the epicentre of the protest.
Here we go again.
You just tuned in. Where have you been?
It is raucous here tonight.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
Live from London, England, this is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America.
You know, I saw Spain yesterday, and I watched the catastrophe that took place. It looks like an invasion of a country.
Well, Giorgia Meloni has confirmed she is suspending the EU's border-free Schengen arrangements with Spain in response to the chaos we've seen in the Spanish enclave of Ceuta. Is Europe going to heed President Trump's warnings and get serious on illegal migration? Also,
The question is, what exactly does success look like? What are we asking these children to do? To have no puberty and then go on to cross-sex hormones? What's that going to prove?
that was GB News' very own Miriam Cates at a previous protest, but a puberty trial has been given the green light to begin recruiting children as young as 11 after a failed attempt to block the study in the High Court. Is this a valid trial or a moral stain on the nation? Also,
we're committed to ensuring Gaza is demilitarized, properly governed, and beautifully rebuilt.
President Trump has declared a breakthrough in negotiations after the Board of Peace reached an agreement for the complete disarmament of Hamas and other terror groups in Gaza. But how can we verify that Hamas have laid down their arms? Also,
too little of football's growing commercial value reaches the parts of the game that need it most.
Andy Burnham has joined the growing masses calling for FIFA President Gianni Infantino to resign. Will the growing discontent end his plans to introduce private investment into the World Cup? I'll be speaking to England legend Rodney Marsh. I'm looking forward to this one to get his thoughts. Also, the love affair is back on. Elon Musk is reported to be jumping back into the political fray ahead of the 2026 midterms with a new field program to help elect Republicans in at least 8 states. But is this a matter of his money, his choice, or should the world's first trillionaire keep his money out of politics? I'm Will Kingston, and this is The Late Show Live. Welcome to The Late Show Live, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for your company. We've got a great panel for you this evening in London. We have political commentator Matthew Stadlin and political commentator and GB News fan favourite Charlie Rowley. And in Washington, D.C., political strategist and podcast host Tiffany Marie Brannan and communications strategist Dan Reen. Friends of the show, one and all, thank you so much for joining me this evening and this morning, respectively. Let's move on to the main news of this evening and indeed the main news of the last week. Western intelligence sources suspect that Morocco facilitated the influx of over 60,000 migrants into the Spanish enclave of Ceuta, with Spain's Prime Minister blaming trafficking gangs for the border chaos. The Spanish territory was overrun by entire families swimming, climbing and storming across the border in the last 24 hours, although I'd add the vast majority of those were fighting-age males. This triggered alarm across Europe. At least 57 people died during the surge, according to local media, and footage circulating on social media shows migrants attacking locals. In response, Italy says it is suspending the EU's border-free Schengen arrangements with Spain in response to the mass influx of migrants into Ceuta from Morocco. Italy does not have a land border with Spain, but the measure will impact people travelling by plane or boat between the two countries. So is this the latest sign that the architects of Europe's borderless dream is lying in tatters? With me now to discuss is Italian journalist Elena Trabottoni. Elena, thank you so much for your time. Tell me more about the machinations behind the scenes here and how Meloni came to this decision.
Well, it's been a very intense day in Italy, all across Europe, really, but particularly in Italy. And the government had been making noises about this suspension ever since yesterday. They were saying they were monitoring closely, and they had indicated they were looking at suspending. And of course, there was a lot of talk earlier in the day about, could Spain be ousted from Schengen? But then obviously the official news came out this evening. Meloni and Italian Foreign Minister Tajani, as well as Vice Prime Minister Salvini, came out and announced that they were suspending the border with Spain. Now, of course, Italy doesn't have a land border with Spain. So what this entails is that people coming across on boats or by plane will be verified and checked at the border, particularly non-EU, non-Schengen nationals in particular. Now, this is quite interesting because, there is a lot of and people are up in arms about this action. But in actual fact, it is quite common across Europe. Article 25 of the Schengen Treaty permits the temporary suspension of Schengen rules and access and mobility across the borders in the case of need, in the case of urgent need. Obviously, it's temporary, and this is what Italy has put into effect. And I was talking to an analyst earlier. There are some figures that are circulating. There appear to have been 498 suspensions of Schengen since 2006. Obviously, that's not just Italy. Italy has been involved in 17 of them. And just to be clear, Italy currently has its border with Slovenia suspended by Schengen regulations. So there is a temporary suspension there in force that has been renewed every 6 months per 6 months.
And so, Elena, I note that this is not unprecedented. At the same time, can we infer that what Italy is saying is that, well, Schengen and the free movement of people is dependent on trust within the European Union and the Eurozone, and Italy, for one, can no longer trust Spain to secure its borders?
Well, it's not just Italy, really. A lot of European leaders have been looking to Spain and have been putting pressure on Spain in the past days. Just to name a few, President Tusk of Poland has addressed what he sees as weakness in the sort of immigration access in Spain. Robert Fico of Slovenia has also, whilst he said that Spain should be suspended and could not be suspended from Schengen by Schengen rules, he did say that Spain should tighten up their external borders outside of Europe. France as well has made noises to that effect, and Finland has actually backed Italy's stance earlier today as well in taking such hard measures with the suspension of the Schengen access from Spain. So I think it's quite a wide concern at the moment within Europe that, the scenes we were seeing are discomforting for many people in Europe, and there is concern about that, especially with some reports saying that it was all orchestrated and planned and set in motion as an organised scheme.
And Elena, help me understand the domestic political dynamics here. Of course, Meloni came in with very hardline rhetoric on immigration. Some people have been disappointed that she hasn't gone far enough on that particular policy area. Is part of this actually to reassert her credentials on immigration to her base in Italy?
Well, there's two different viewpoints on this. Her opponents say, this is too extreme, and this action could actually backfire and be damaging to Italy. Whilst a lot of people in her party are saying this is just symbolic, because at the end of the day, how many people will be coming over from claim, it's a controlled flow, but it's a very clear way of sending a signal. What has to be said is that the number of immigrants during the first years of the Meloni government actually went up in terms of inflows from the previous centre-left government. So that's actually an interesting figure in itself. But it also has to be said that Meloni has tapered down her anti-immigrant stand, especially in the last years of her governing Italy. And she does face very strong opposition by extreme right military opponent, Vannacci, who is taking a very strong stand against immigration, and Meloni, it's thought, could call early elections amid concern of her weakening base.
Yeah, Alina, thank you very much for your time. That was very insightful. Okay, let's go to my panel in London now. We've got let's start with Charlie Rowley in London. Charlie, what have been your reflections as you've seen this just bracing, extraordinary footage coming out of Ceuta?
Well, it is extraordinary footage, as you say, seemingly, hundreds, if not thousands of people swimming across the shore onto the beaches of that particular part of Spain and effectively getting into the country. What was fascinating about that conversation just a second ago, if I may, if an argument was made 10 years ago by David Cameron and George Osborne to say, actually, we could suspend and use Article 25, I think, was mentioned there, of the Schengen area of the free movement within Europe as an EU country, then I think they might have had a better chance of winning the referendum. Because that's what people. But it was the free movement of people that really riled people up. And David Cameron tried to get a deal in that regard. But he could have. But he was unable to do that. And I think just a penny for their thoughts if they're watching. Because if you have a prime minister like Giorgia Meloni that's able to say, you know what, actually, enough is enough. I'm not having these people cross the border from border into my country. That's the kind of leadership that we should be having in the UK.
Matthew, has Italy done the right thing here?
No, it's a nonsense. It's performative nonsense. First of all, Donald Trump said the hundreds of thousands of people were crossing over. Actually, it was 50 or 60,000.
It's still a huge amount of people.
Well, that's all right. I haven't got to that point, yeah. The pictures, when you see them, are disturbing pictures. But guess what? As of this evening, over 48,000 of those people have gone back voluntarily to Morocco. That's point one. Point two, as I think your guest was saying there, these people can't move to mainland Europe anyway because this enclave doesn't operate under the same Schengen rules. You have people like Trump and hard right figures in the UK trying desperately to weaponise these disturbing pictures, and you have people saying, they're coming to Calais, they're going to come here. No, they're not. Can everyone just calm down?
Matthew, it's still very disturbing, the ease with which this happened. I'll take your point. Even if the vast majority of them have gone back, the fact that there can be a border raid on a Spanish territory is incredibly concerning.
The European Commission is furious about it. Ursula von der Leyen is very angry about it. Clearly, the external borders to the EU have to be a lot more robust than that. And there are questions as to what on earth the Moroccans were doing on their side. Absolutely, you need to reinforce those borders. No question about that. But let's not panic and let's not give in to the hysteria on the right.
If the Italian border force and the Spanish border force are about as useful as the French border force, then I'd be incredibly worried because they seem to let anybody in and anybody pass through.
The French stopped 46,000.
It's about 30%. It's about 30%. It is about 30%, and that is not good enough about the 500 to 700 million that we're paying them.
Let's go to DC. Tiffany, I'll go to you in DC first. Now is not the time to panic, according to Matthew. When I see that sort of footage, I must admit, maybe I've got a sensitive disposition, but I'm panicking.
Yeah, I know. By the way, the beard looks great. Matthew is, as usual, I'm sad to say, wrong. Because here's the reality. This is a huge problem. Immigration is an invasive cancer on Europe, always has been, always will be, ever since we allowed these open border policies to stand. This was a perfect almost example to the rest of Europe that this is real. This is what's really going to happen if there's no checks and balances put into place. And also, I think it's a very interesting loophole when you consider the fact that Morocco is actually a U.S. ally. Not only that, but they've actually been an Israel ally. So when we look at kind of this interesting dynamic, Spain has not been. So there's kind of this also other conversation going on at the same time, where not only was this maybe, you know, some say a demonstration to see how easily these borders can be overrun by motivated people who could easily take over. Again, most of them were military-aged men. They weren't, you know, a lot of children or women in the position and the makeup, the composition of those who were coming across the border. But also with the amount of, you know, a population that Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has now took into place, over 500,000 that are now on their way to citizenship, which means they will be citizens of Europe and will be able to travel freely throughout the continent. So I think there's a lot going on here. I think it's much more layered and nuanced than we even understand. I think it was kind of an example, if it was perpetrated or encouraged by the Moroccan government, to show how weak Europe's borders truly are and how anti-Israel Spain has been and how it's kind of come back to backfire, but also to really give a message to Europeans that this is a serious issue.
Yeah. Dan, let's go to Morocco specifically, because if, as reports suggest, this is in some way a coordinated attempt to undermine Spain, and I for one think it probably was. You know, 60,000 people don't just independently decide to jump on trucks and cross the border on the exact same day. There has to be some level of coordination here. That would suggest that potentially now we have to start thinking of illegal migration as a tactic in asymmetric warfare.
Absolutely. And I don't know if I could say that this is chaos and this is organized all at the same time, but it had to have been. It was all kinds of chaos. I mean, all kinds of crimes that were being committed, and we don't need a politician or any type of leader to breathe life into scaring people about this. It's scary enough by looking at these images. I mean, it is certainly a troublesome situation, and if it is organized, again, it has to be to get that many people in the same place at the same time to cause that type of havoc, and then to get them all to supposedly go back so quickly. Someone's out there trying to prove some kind of point and trying to show that there's a more political message behind all of this. So again, I find it incredibly troubling, and I think it's something that is probably going to be happening again more and more, and it's going to be something that other countries are going to have to take a look at, because again, if you don't have a border, Trump said it many times, if you don't have a border, you don't have a country.
Should I tell you what I'm frightened by? I'm not frightened. I live in London, unlike you guys who seem to live in America. I'm certainly not frightened by these pictures. What I do find appalling is that 57 of these people died. 57 human beings died in these scenes, and they are appalling scenes. And I've seen a picture of a child in one of those sort of rubber rings being helped through the waters, presumably by her father. That obviously shouldn't be happening. No parent should be doing that, although it shows a sense of desperation. That is what terrifies me. Not the idea that these guys are coming to London, where I live, but that 57 human beings lost their lives. The vast majority of these people have gone back. They're not going to be able to get to mainland Europe. This is being weaponised by people like President Trump and reform politicians in this country.
Matthew, can't you see, though, that those deaths are, at the very least, indirectly the result of weak left-wing governments who create warped incentives for these people to put themselves in dangerous positions to come either over the channel or to flood a border in this way? This is the result of the incentives of socialist governments in Spain, and, I would add, every single death in the English Channel is the result of the warped incentives created by this UK government.
No.
Well, that's simple enough.
Well, Matthew, you can't be serious.
I think. Tiffany, no, not now, not now. Still ahead on the Late Show Live, ladies and gentlemen.
The question is, what exactly does success look like? What are we asking these children to do? To have no puberty and then go on to cross-sex hormones? What's that going to prove?
That was, of course, GB News' very own Miriam Cates at a previous protest, but a puberty blocker trial has been given the green light to begin recruiting children as young as 11. This is a moral stain on the nation, ladies and gentlemen. It's one we're going to discuss after the break on The Late Show Live.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis, in the car,
in the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again.
To start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question. Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way.
You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless, and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here at GB News, we made a promise to tell your stories.
And on the 6th of August, we're marking 5 years of doing exactly that.
Celebrate with us by having your say. Join in the debates live on TV and radio.
And meeting your favourite presenters across the country, from Leeds to Aberdeen, from Belfast to Barry Island.
Plus, join me in Essex for our biggest live show of the year. Scan the QR code or visit gbnews.com/celebrate. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Don't forget to get your thoughts in to gbnews.com/your say. I'll be keeping an eye on them as the show progresses. Let's move on. A puberty blocker trial has been given the green light to begin recruiting children after a failed attempt to block the study in the High Court. Baroness Cass's independent review previously concluded there was insufficient evidence that the drugs were either beneficial or harmful to children, and recommended a properly designed clinical trial should be carried out to answer those questions. She was absolutely convinced that more children will be harmed if we don't do the trial than if we do it. However, campaigners asked the court to intervene, arguing that regulators had acted unlawfully by approving the experiment, which will allow 11-year-old girls and 12-year-old boys to be given puberty blockers. After a 2-day hearing, the High Court refused permission to proceed with a full judicial review, and enrolment into the study is expected to start immediately. Let's go to my panel now. Charlie, I'll start with you. I believe sincerely that this is a moral stain on the nation. I think that this is the sort of medical experimentation which in some respects is equivalent to the forced lobotomisation of men and women in the early parts of the 20th century, in that the effects of puberty blockers are often irreversible, and this is carried out on children who do not have the agency to consent, even if their parents, many of whom will be ideologically captured by the trans ideology movement, are free to act on their behalf. I think this is disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is wrong, wholly wrong, for somebody at the age of 11 or 12 to be undergoing a clinical trial that prevents them developing in a way in which that they themselves, I do not think, having gone through and will need to go through other medical examinations, particularly with psychologists, if they do actually want to end up transitioning when they're a bit older and of an actual age where they can consent properly to doing that. Because at 11 or 12, there are people that will be trans, there's no doubt about that. There are people who will identify as non-gender. There'll be people as people non-binary, for example. There'll be people who come out as gay or lesbian. That is absolutely fine. And I would encourage those people in life, if that's what they need, because being gay or being trans doesn't define you as a person. What defines you, in my view, is what contribution you make to the society and your community and your country. So I've no issue with those people or path that they are on, but at the age of 11 and 12 years old, to undergo clinical trials of examination which will have life-changing consequences, where you may not actually, you might believe one thing, or you might passionately feel at the age of 11 that you are born a man, but you wish to become a woman, or a trans woman, I should say. You might think that's the right approach, but without a length of period of time with clinical psychologists and everything else in between, I think 11 and 12 is just completely wrong.
And that's the concern I have, Matthew, and that I don't doubt, to Charlie's point, that gender dysphoria is a thing. I think it is much smaller than the numbers would suggest, because so many kids who will say that they are trans, inverted commas, are caught up in a social contagion as opposed to having a psychological condition. But if you do have a psychological condition, that requires psychological interventions. It shouldn't be the case that you give children, in many cases, irreversible drugs to stunt puberty. This, to me, feels like you're making 11-year-old kids guinea pigs.
So, first of all, I think the language you used in your introduction, Will, was immensely unhelpful. We are dealing with, as you've now accepted, extremely vulnerable, in some cases, maybe in all cases, young children. Hilary Cass, who was commissioned to do this independent review, herself said that the evidence for using puberty blockers was shaky. But she also said, as you have read out yourself, that more harm would be done by not doing the trial than doing the trial. Now, that's her view. She's one person, but she's done clearly a lot of work on it. None of us, this person's saying sick person down the line, none of us are experts, as far as I know, in this field. My instinct is that children should not have their puberty blocked. That's my instinct. But I'm not an expert, and clearly the people, or the vast majority of the people involved in this area, their main and overriding, their only interest here is to help vulnerable children find the right path.
Tiffany, your thoughts?
Yeah, that's insane. Vulnerable children, 226 of them in this study, should not be put on the same drugs we use to chemically castrate sexual predators and sexual offenders. And that's what they're going to do. The reality is that these drugs cause permanent, irreversible damage that
I should just add, Tiffany, to interrupt. The study would, Tiffany, sorry to interrupt. The study would deny that those drugs are equivalent. But go on.
I mean, we'd have no idea what they're doing to these young children.
That's because you haven't done the research.
Know the percentage of the potency.
That's because you haven't done the research.
Unlike, we say we don't want to experiment on beagles. We say that it's unhumane to do all these animal experimentations. I mean, we have PETA, so why don't we have that for kids? Because if we're not going to experiment on dogs, we shouldn't be experimenting on human children.
Dan, the proponents or advocates of a trial like this would suggest that the potential risks of these drugs are outweighed by the benefits of giving the children the avenue to basically recognise what is the gender that they feel on the inside. How do you think about that cost-benefit analysis that needs to go into a study like this?
I think it's sick. It's an absolute sick comparison, and it's a false benefit. I've got 3 children. I have an 18-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 13-year-old. They can't decide what they're going to wear on the first day of school. They can't decide where they want to go for dinner. So to have them make any type of life-altering choices, or as a parent to make that for them, Absolutely sick. If you think that your child is at risk or is having problems, get them help. Get them the mental help that they will need to talk this through so they can come to the conclusions that they need to come to as adults. But to allow children or parents to make these decisions, again, it's not even a medical issue. This is just sick. This is depraved.
The concern that I have, you look at the rates of trans children amongst Hollywood actors and actresses, and it is dramatically higher than the population. And I don't think there's some weird medical phenomena going on in the Hollywood Hills. It would indicate that for many parents, and I'm not denying that they don't love their children, but there is a particular ideology which means that they are more comfortable with this sort of medicalisation of children than perhaps they should be, and that for me is very concerning. The Pathways Trial research team has said on this, we welcome the court's decision. The safety and welfare of young people will remain our highest priority in carrying out this research. The Pathways Trial is a carefully designed study to give much needed evidence about the potential benefits and risks of puberty suppression to improve NHS care. The design of the Pathways Trial has been carefully reviewed by independent researchers and has been approved by the UK's health research regulators, the HRA and the MHRA. The study has extensive safeguards, including strict eligibility criteria, consent processes, physical and mental health monitoring before and during the study, and continued psychological and social support. Okay, still ahead on The Late Show Live.
We're committed to ensuring Gaza is demilitarized, properly governed, and beautifully rebuilt.
US President Donald Trump has declared a breakthrough in negotiations after the Board of Peace reached an agreement for the complete disarmament of Hamas and other terror groups in Gaza. But is a deal with a genocidal death cult really worth the paper that it's written on? We'll be discussing that on The Late Show Live, only on GBNews.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter? So that's a very live question. Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way.
You will not want to miss it, trust me.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point.
Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live on the People's Channel, GB News. Well, President Trump has announced that Hamas have agreed to give up its weapons arsenal in exchange for Israel's withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. Announcing the deal on social media last night, the president described the agreement as historic and a monumental step towards ending the fighting, although Israel is yet to comment on the plans. Under current proposals, Hamas would first hand over its heavy weapons to a transitional Palestinian body to be stored and decommissioned. The Director General of the Board of Peace said the agreement has taken months of very difficult negotiations, emphasising that implementation and verification of the deal have to be real. But how can the United States and the international community verify that the terrorist group has relinquished its arsenal? With me now, former paratrooper and senior associate fellow at the Henry Jackson Society, Andrew Fox. Andrew, great to have you on. I guess the question which is top of mind for me is how on earth can we trust any deal that is done with Hamas, given that they've shown little willingness to stick to deals in the past?
Well, we can't. And, you know, this is a lovely announcement by President Trump, and it's all very morale-inducing. But as you say, the proof will be in the pudding. Now, we have to look, I think, at actions, not words. And if we look at what Hamas has done since the ceasefire came into effect in October last year, they have mercilessly put down their opposition. We've seen multiple videos of executions, kneecappings, beatings and similar. Their Arrow unit has put down the groups that Israel armed in opposition to Hamas. And they're basically fully in control of 2 million people in that remaining 30% of Gaza that they hold, with the other 70% being held by the IDF. Having been reinforced by huge amounts of aid that wildly exceed the requirements in terms of calories per day and tonnage of aid. So Hamas are in a very strong position when it comes to actual control, but they are cornered in, they are boxed. So the idea that they are just going to hand over their weapons and allow a peaceful transition based on everything they've done since the ceasefire kicked in, I think is relatively low at this point.
The silence from Israel is conspicuous at the moment. Do you have any idea on how they will respond to this plan?
Well, I can tell you what Israelis I've spoken to have told me, and I've spoken to people at the CMCC, the Civil Military Coordination Centre down in Kiryat Gat in southern Israel, and their position really was that it's actually not their problem at this point. America took ownership of the problem when Trump put his deal in place. America is calling the shots, and really Israel is, all they have to really do is hold the yellow line in that 70% of Gaza they hold, and the status quo really suits them. You know, Israel's borders are protected. There's no chance of a repeat of 7th of October. There's no rockets being fired into Israel. So the status quo is actually vastly better for them than it was 2.5, 3 years ago. So they're not in any hurry to see a resolution to this. And it really is Washington's problem at this stage. So that works for Jerusalem.
That's an interesting insight that Hamas still does hold 30% of the territory in the Gaza Strip. The line that has been used by supporters of Israel across the course of this conflict is, well, you can't put out a fire halfway. Is there any risk that Hamas, particularly with the support of Iran, could rise again, or are they effectively now, have they been denuded in the region?
Well, we have to think of this in the long term. Hamas is an organisation that spent every year since 2007, and actually for a long time before that, embedding itself in every part of life within Gaza. So every mosque, every school, every government agency you can think of, from the Ministry of Justice through to the Ministry of Health, all of it is Hamas, literally all of it. And they have ruthlessly purged everyone that's not Hamas. So this is not really a military problem in isolation. It is a whole society problem. And uprooting the non-military parts of Hamas will be far harder, I suspect, than the military parts of Hamas. So they will look at this because they are a Muslim Brotherhood operation. This is how the Muslim Brotherhood works. They will look at this very much generationally. They won't think in electoral cycles. They won't think in 5-year blocks. They will be looking at this as what they would call a hudna in Arabic, which means a pause to rearm. And whilst Hamas retains its huge levels of influence within Gaza, that ambition to rearm will always be there. Even if it takes 20 or 30 years, that will still always be the ambition. So uprooting them from Gazan civil society is actually the real challenge here. And I'm not seeing any pathway being presented to that at this stage.
It's a scary thought. Andrew, thanks for your time this morning. Let's go to my panel now. I'll start in DC, and Dan, I'll go to you. What do you make of this announcement from Donald Trump?
So I want to be optimistic. I really, really do. Because if there's any leader out there that can bring this to a realization, it's President Trump. At the same time, I'm incredibly skeptical. Hamas has been there for a real long time. I mean, they're launching rockets from schools and hospitals. They've been stealing aid that's meant for the people that are there. I mean, it is a terrorist organization. However, they might see the writing on the wall with the Iranian funding really just drying up. I mean, if Iran's not able to sell a drop of oil, where is Hamas going to get their money from? So, so again, I agree that they're playing the long game here. Again, I want to be optimistic. I want to see this happen, and I think that it'd be a fantastic thing that if it did. But as this moves forward, it's going to have to be, as Ronald Reagan would have said, a trust but verify style situation, because there's no possible way we can just trust this to happen without having some real benchmarks in place, because they've been terrorists for too long and been a thorn in the side for the region for way too long to just trust them to go forward and disarm.
Well, Tiffany, Reagan also said, I think it was one of Reagan's advisors, that personnel is policy, and the personnel of Hamas are a genocidal death cult that, to Andrew's point, think with a generational lens. And whilst they are still there, there is always the risk that another October 7 could take place. Do you share Dan's scepticism?
I do, and I think, you don't negotiate with terrorists. You just can't. And I don't know if any of you guys are Marvel comic fans, but I am, and it can't help but remind me of Hydra, where it says, you cut off one head and like 2 more grow back. And that's really what this feels like. It feels like we might think that this is a small victory, a battle won, but groups like Hamas don't play in short-term games. They play in long-term games. This is a chess game, not a checkers game. And so when they look almost like a possum, like they're defeated, it's really because they are regrouping often, and often are looking for new ways to at least ideologically start winning the war on other fronts. So I think that while, we can really hope for the best, it's probably not likely this will hold long term, but it might be a good boost for the midterm. So there's that.
Well, Matthew, that's an interesting thought. How much of this do you think is political, given that the Iran war is now very unpopular with the public, and Trump is aware of the political pressures on the Republican Party in the lead up to the midterms?
I was about to mention the midterms. President Donald Trump is clearly desperate for wins. Look at the Iran war. He came into power saying he wasn't going to be the president of the forever wars. He was going to be a man of peace. And now the Iran war, how many times has he told us that's about to end, and it still goes on? So of course he's desperate for peace. He's desperate for a win. I stand against so much that Donald Trump stands for. I think he's been an appalling president. You won't be surprised to hear me say that. But if he were to achieve peace in the Middle East, that would clearly be a phenomenal achievement, and I hope to God he does. However, as you've already said, the silence so far from Israel is deafening. I'm not sure the extent to which Netanyahu is really listening that hard to Trump anymore, how bonded he feels actually behind the scenes from Trump. I think he's probably quite prepared to, and we've seen it, haven't we, act unilaterally. And that is a very serious concern, because this issue in the Middle East is one of those issues where people often feel they have to be on one side or the other. No, Hamas are an evil terrorist organisation. Netanyahu's Israel have done appalling things in the Gaza Strip, and they're doing appalling things in the West Bank. And you've got these two sides which may prove in an ongoing way to be irreconcilable, and that's obviously the big concern.
Charlie, your reflections?
Well, I think you can be quite divisive about it. As Matthew says, Hamas is a terrorist organisation. It should be wiped out. But if we've got to a state where there is a pause, a ceasefire, decommissioning of weapons, Hamas are walking away, OK, we don't know what they're going to do in 10, 5, 15, 20 years' time, but we know if that is the case today, then that should be celebrated. That is a victory for the President of the United States, the only one, probably, Donald Trump, who would be able to cajole and caress all of those leaders to create that board of peace, to get this kind of deal done. Will it last? We don't know, but I think I would welcome all people on all political divides to come together and celebrate in a success of Donald Trump's foreign policy.
Well, I've heard too much fence-sitting from this panel on the question of will it last, so a one-word answer, and it has to be yes or no from each of you. Will it last? Dan, yes or no?
No.
Tiffany?
No.
Matthew?
No.
Charlie?
Hamas, I'm going to say yes.
Well, that's all the balance that I require. Thank you, Charlie. I appreciate that. Still ahead on The Late Show Live. Labor has won the Manchester mayoral election. Bev Craig has been announced as the winner, defeating the Reform candidate who finished second. But what is to be made of the record low turnout, the lowest in the history of Manchester mayoralty elections? This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis in the car.
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there. With the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again. To start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Britain is not just a geographical expression. We are a people bound together by history and culture that are distinctively British. Join me to celebrate our music, theatre, artworks and literature, which we can explore and enjoy together.
Everybody's welcome.
Sunday with Michael Portillo. Every Sunday at 11 a.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dan.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live, and this is breaking news this evening. Labor has won the Manchester mayoral election. Bev Craig has been announced the winner, defeating Reform UK's Cyan Astley, who finished second. However, turnout fell to a stark 25%. This marks the lowest recorded since the mayoralty was created in 2017, with hundreds of thousands of voters choosing to stay at home. Despite the low turnout, this marks a decisive pass for the Prime Minister's first electoral test since he arrived in Downing Street. Let's go to the panel in London. Charlie, I'll start with you. This, in the end, wasn't a surprising result, but that turnout number is interesting. Are people just sick of politics?
Well, first of all, it's a disgrace that it's taken over 24 hours since the polls closed to get that result on just one position, which is the Mayor of Greater Manchester. I thought Manchester had now become the centre of the universe. If you listen to Andy Burnham over the last 2 weeks, you would have thought Manchester was firing on all cylinders, that everybody should become Manchester all of a sudden, and it took that long just to declare a mayor. I mean, you know, that is, I think...
They've had a mayor.
They had an absolute mayor. Someone's got to look into that. But you're right. I mean, a low turnout on a position that is now getting even more powers. More mayors across the country will be getting more powers. I think people need to maybe just look at, you know, we need to increase their value. We need to sort of up their visibility, I think. But that's down to the candidates and the people themselves, you know. Andy Burnham, like Boris Johnson, undoubtedly high-profile politicians that were mayors of their respective cities, London and Manchester, and people knew about them, and turnout was higher, therefore. I'm not saying you need a celebrity kind of politician to be in those positions all of the time, but we need to maybe sort of, you know, make sure that these positions are on the map, because on such a low turnout and with more powers coming their way, the public need to know what kind of decisions these people are making if they want to change their vote maybe in 4 or 5 years' time.
I'm not sure I would have turned out to vote for Bev Craig. She didn't seem the most charismatic candidate from what I saw. I'm joking. I'm sure she'll be a brilliant Manchester mayor.
Clip it up.
You asked, well, actually, a serious question when people are just fed up with politics. If people are fed up with politics, you would expect 2 years into a new administration, they were angry with the government, as undoubtedly a lot of people were when, for whatever reason, rightly or wrongly, when Starmer was Prime Minister, you'd expect them to get out there and vote for the protest party, Reform being the obvious protest party, and yet Reform got a thrashing. Now, I'm not asking you, or GB News viewers, to put much confidence in my predictions, because I did say a couple of months ago that Keir Starmer was going over.
Don't worry, we won't.
But I think there is a good case to make that Reform are in really deep trouble now. They are on the slide. We've had a couple of polls this week that put Labour ahead of them for the first time in a really long time. Don't get me wrong, it's an astonishing political achievement that they've been where they have with only 8 MPs, but I think they are now in all sorts of trouble.
Charlie, this is a fair question. I've spoken to Reform insiders, and even they will concede that they're going through a rough trot. The question is this the political equivalent of an awkward teenage phase? They are still effectively a start-up political party. They're going to go through rough trots. Or is that trajectory that Matthew mentioned embedded and now potentially going to accelerate?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think on the one hand, you've got, particularly in Manchester, sorry, just to go back to, I think there's been a lot of politics in Manchester. So you've had the Makerfield by-election, you've had, you know, Andy Burnham coming into number 10. There was a by-election.
They're exhausted from voting.
They're exhausted. I think people of Manchester, and particularly the North West, are probably, but so they might be an outlier. But people did turn out at the local elections to vote Reform in their numbers across Greater Manchester. And their campaign was, you know, vote Reform, get Starmer out, I seem to remember.
Well, Starmer's out now. They've made a terrible mistake, Reform. If they've forced Starmer out, now they've got Mr Popular, Andy Burnham.
But that might be the case. You never know. But they did get a turnout, and people did want to vote for an alternative party. I think you're right. Every party goes through difficult times in the polls. I remember Theresa May was 20 points ahead at one point before she called an election, and, you know, managed to lose seats. So the polls chop and change. I think what the public really want, and what people will decide who they want to govern them, locally or nationally at the next election, is delivery. So we've got Andy Burnham, who's a much better communicator than Keir Starmer, but that doesn't take much. It's now about outcomes.
And a quick one, which may have gone underreported, and that is Restore got more votes than the Conservatives. Can we read anything into that?
Curtains for the Tories?
I don't think the Tories have ever performed particularly well in the North West General, and I should know as a candidate that once stood in the North West.
What's fascinating about the Tories to me is that for Labour, when they came to power, when Tony Blair came to power in 1997, all those years ago, He faced a decimated Conservative Party who'd been in power for 18 years. People were sick of them. And they had a free rein Labour for a while, and they were popular for a while. But when Starmer won a couple of years ago, instead of just facing this decimated Tory party, they faced this insurgent party in the shape of Reform who hadn't been in government before, and so could say a plague on both your houses. That's starting, I think, to fall apart a bit for Reform. The Tories, meanwhile, with Kemi Badenoch, we hear quite a bit about the sort of Kemi is reinvigorating the Conservative Party and putting clear blue water between the party of today and the party of the past. But actually, results like this are pretty shocking.
Well, more coming up in the next hour, ladies and gentlemen, including this.
Too little of football's growing commercial value reaches the parts of the game that need it most.
Breaking news from FIFA, Gianni Infantino scraps World Cup sell-off plans after facing a fierce backlash and calls to resign. I'll be speaking to England legend Rodney Marsh to get his thoughts. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News. We've got so much more coming up for you in the next hour in addition to that football story. Not just that, but that's all looking forward to after the break.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Warm sunshine for many of us through today, though a little bit cooler than it has been earlier on this week. A few showers still for more northwestern areas as well. It's a bit of a cloudier start across parts of western Scotland in particular. Some of these showers will push further east into eastern Scotland, some eastern areas of northern England. Perhaps the odd shower in the far north of Wales, but for many parts of England and Wales it should remain pretty dry through much of today. Plenty of sunshine as well. UV levels will be high and it will still feel quite hot in the sunshine, with temperatures reaching 26 degrees in the southeast, quite widely in the low 20s for more central areas of England. Tonight it remains pretty dry for much of the UK, even though showers tending to fade away. It's just the Northern Isles seeing a few lingering into the evening. So for much of Scotland, a dry night to come, but a breeze will continue holding temperatures up a little bit higher across more western areas. Across the shelter, though, it will be another quite fresh night ahead. Plenty of clear skies. A bit of mist and fog could develop overnight as well. The sunshine may be a little bit hazier to end the day across the very far south of England in particular, but plenty of dry weather overnight. We've got a ridge of high pressure still with us. The winds pick up a little bit across the far north of Scotland, to northerly winds, so that will bring quite a chilly feel to start the day on Sunday here. Elsewhere, plenty of clear skies. As I said, a bit of mist and fog. Towns and cities just about double digits, but rurally could be down into the mid single figures to start the day on Sunday, particularly across the north and east. There's a change on Sunday to wetter conditions by the end of the day, but lots of sunshine ahead of that. Perhaps a little less sunshine compared to Saturday for some of us, but it's going to still feel quite warm. We're starting to pick up some warmer air once again through Sunday, so temperatures climbing towards the higher 20s. And on Monday, it's set to be a little bit warmer once again. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis in the car,
in the kitchen,
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way.
You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Live from London, England, this is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America.
You know, I saw Spain yesterday and I watched the catastrophe that took place. It looks like an invasion of a country.
Giorgia Meloni has confirmed she is suspending the EU's border-free Schengen arrangements with Spain in response to the chaos we've seen in the Spanish enclave of Ceuta. Is Europe going to heed President Trump's warning and get serious on illegal migration? Also,
too little of football's growing commercial value reaches the parts of the game that need it most.
breaking news from FIFA, Gianni Infantino scraps World Cup sell-off plans after facing fierce backlash and calls to resign. I'll be speaking to England football legend Rodney Marsh to get his thoughts shortly. Also,
I think it will really help people with the cost of living pressures they're facing, and I think it will put money in people's pocket.
From today, most under-16s will be able to travel on most local buses in England completely free as part of the government's latest cost of living support package. It's part of a raft of policies, but are they enough and are they costed?
The ayes to the right were 304, the noes to the left 203. So the ayes have it, the ayes have it.
Well, it might have passed last time, but Andy Burnham has reportedly shared his concerns about plans to reduce the number of jury trials and wants to look in the detail at the proposals. So just how does the new Prime Minister plan to deal with the backlog in our courts? And well, one of the more unorthodox love affairs of modern times may be back on. Elon Musk is reported to be jumping back into the political fray ahead of the 2026 midterms with a new field program to help elect Republicans in at least 8 states. But is this a matter of his money, his choice, or should the world's first trillionaire keep his money out of politics? I'm Will Kingston, and this is The Late Show Live. Welcome back to The Late Show Live for another hour, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for your company. Let's go to my panel in London. We have political commentator Matthew Stadlen and Charlie Rowley, and in Washington, D.C., political strategist and podcast host Tiffany Marie Brannan and communications strategist Dan Reen. Thank you for staying with me, team. Let's go to the top news of the hour, and that is, of course, FIFA and Gianni Infantino. After days of piling pressure, including from Andy Burnham, FIFA President Gianni Infantino has scrapped plans to sell off parts of the World Cup. Infantino has said the project has created divisions of a nature which are no longer in the interest of the objective set out in the first place. It comes after Andy Burnham called on the FIFA president to resign over what he called outrageous plans to sell a stake in the World Cup. Well, I'm excited about this one. With me now to discuss is England football legend Rodney Marsh. Rodney, thank you so much for joining me. It's great to see you. Before we get to Infantino, I would be remiss not to ask of your reflections on England's World Cup campaign more generally.
Hello, boys. Hello, everybody. Yes, I'm in Tampa, Florida, USA. My thoughts on England. I'd also like to give my thoughts on America because, I don't know if you know this, but there were 42 million people watched the USA-Belgium game over here. England, they always do, under different managers, threaten to win things and never do. And they didn't disappoint again. It was so close, but and yet so far as usual, guys.
Well, as an Australian, I will not rub any salt into the wound. I've got more preservation instincts than that. To go to Infantino, Rodney. This bloke, for me, has made a series of errors over the course of the tournament and before that. Do you think it's time for him to go?
Well, I'll tell you what's going to happen, shall I? First of all, do you remember about 30 years ago when the Americans first started to get involved in the Premier League and they said, well, it's only one or two, they're never going to influence football. Well, guess what? The Americans are influencing football worldwide. I think there's now 14 owners in English football. They said in England, the English said, we're never going to have the names on the backs of shirts like they do in America. Well, guess what? They do. And then they said about the Super League, that was UEFA, and it came apart. Well, no, we're going to stand down from the Super League, but we're going to have the World Cup of club football in America. And everybody went, no, they'll never do that. Well, guess what? Chelsea won it. So whatever the Americans want, eventually the Americans get. And my take on the whole thing is eventually, as a great friend of mine once said, his name was Giorgio Chinaglia, a footballer. He said, Rodney, it's all about the money, you moron. and I think that's where we are now. It's all about the money. It's going to go quiet for a couple of years. It will rear its ugly head in about 2 or 3, 4 years. And by the way, I heard today, I don't know if you know this, guys, that apparently Donald Trump has put in a private bid for America to host the World Cup in 2038. So you add all that together and you get America ruling the world.
Well, does the Americanisation of football annoy you? The little things like extending out the finals half-time break to accommodate that really garish spectacle of the half-time show and the water breaks. Does it annoy you as much as it annoys me?
Hate it. I hate it with a passion. I hated it in the first place when they said about 7 or 8 years ago in America we had a little experimentation. Should we make the game into 4 quarters? Everybody went, no, you can't do that. They do that in the NFL, in football, gridiron football. No, well, guess what? Here we are, and the World Cup's got 4 quarters. So it's only going to get more. It's only going to get more money. And eventually, America, I think, and Americans' ownership will dictate what happens in world football. That's just my take.
At the same time, I was heartened by the response of UEFA and the Europeans when this proposal was mooted. They did come out very strongly and say, no, this is basically a tournament which is held on trust for future generations. It is not something that can be sold off to the highest bidder. I thought that was encouraging.
Yeah, little known fact, or maybe it's not little known fact, is that FIFA is a non-profit organisation. It's run as a non-profit. Well, if you bring profit into a non-profit, guess what? You've got all sorts of litigation. You've got all sorts of constitutional remaking football in a new image because FIFA is non-profit. That will change. Now then, there is a problem, guys. There is a problem. And 55 of the countries, and they're all smaller countries, by the way, like Curacao and these smaller countries, Trinidad and Tobago, they don't mind a few quid. They don't mind getting a few quid, and they've got votes. So when this comes around, and it will, in 2, 3, 4 years' time, and we get those votes from those teams in the islands and all that, I think we might be looking at a privatised World Cup.
Well, that is a concern. Final question, Rodney. Should Infantino go? Should he resign?
In my view, I should have been in the first place, because it's all been about money and money and money. And then we had the ridiculous peace prize to Donald Trump out of nowhere that nobody saw coming or agreed with. I don't think he should have been in the first place. There you go.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Rodney, an absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming on GB News. That was English footballing royalty, Rodney Marsh. Matthew, I know you are a football nut. Your reflections?
No need about the football.
I actually was thinking I really wanted just to basically park the rest of the show and just get a few beers in and just chat football stories with Rodney, but we've got a schedule to stick to.
Out there enjoying the sunshine, although we've got quite a bit of it here in London at the moment. No, listen, I think that it is... I said on social media when this story broke that I thought it was one of the most disgraceful stories in the history of sport. The idea that the custodians of the world game, FIFA, were planning to privatise the World Cup, or part of the World Cup, which is one of the most precious institutions we have as football fans, and not just football fans, people who don't really like football get involved in the World Cup. It's a way that we can come together along with the Olympics. It is a wonderful celebration of humanity, of skill, and the stories behind it are fantastic. I actually thought the Americans did, I know it was Mexico and Canada as well, but I thought the Americans did a pretty good job of putting on that World Cup. I thought it was an entertaining World Cup. I disagree with Big Sam, who was on the channel yesterday. I think he thought there were too many teams. I enjoyed the fact that there were that many teams and you had the opportunity for Cape Verde to do as well as they did. But on this Infantino story, the FIFA, I haven't looked it up, but there must be, 140, 150 members, I would have thought, of FIFA. It's truly a world body. Why have we had... nothing against the Swiss, my godmother's Swiss. Why have we had 2 Swiss leaders of FIFA in a row? That just doesn't make any sense to me. But on the substance of this, fabulous they've backed down. Football's won. People have won, fans have won, and Andy Burnham's won, because he came straight out of the blocks, didn't he? He said, let me say this very directly. Football is not something that can be owned. I'm paraphrasing. Football is for all of us. It's for the fans. It's for the people who turn out week in, week out, whatever league that might be. So this is a great victory for people power, for prime ministers, new prime ministers, and for football.
211 members of FIFA. I'm not quite sure how that maths works, given that there are 195 countries in the world. Maybe someone at home may be able to enlighten me on that one. Maybe more FIFA dodginess. But there was a really nice line, actually, in this UEFA response to the FIFA proposal. Lovely prose, actually. No one has the moral authority to sell what they merely hold in trust for the next generation. I think that's well said.
Oh, absolutely. And look, let's be absolutely... Infantino did not listen to Andy Burnham. I mean, that did not cut through, so that was probably
he got the ball rolling.
It was playing to the UK and England football base, I think, more than anything else. But that's absolutely right, that line from UEFA. And goodness knows that they know how to have their fingers burnt because of what Rodney says, trying to move too quickly or do things that they haven't even consulted with clubs when it came to that Super League, when it came to the Champions League. Infantino's done exactly the same. I mean, I'm all for leaders of countries being as arrogant as they need to be, as confident as they need to be, to pick up the phone and say, come on, get rid of that red card to our top striker.
You're not all for that. I thought it was outrageous.
It was outrageous that FIFA accepted it. But if you want to be someone to back your own country, I'm all for that. But FIFA is not a country. And this is where Infantino is clearly trying to emulate some of Trump's behaviour and just thinks that he can cream a load of extra money from expanding it out, getting more people in to privatise off the FIFA, he would end up with, I think, about 47.
I've got to come back on that, Charlie. I'm sorry.
47 million
If you're a
pounds.
leader of a country, you can advocate for your country's interests, but that doesn't involve effectively encouraging corruption. I'm not saying that FIFA acted corruptly in reversing that decision.
Well, I think they did.
It gave the sense to the world that they did, and Trump should have been nowhere near a telephone.
Well, I'm slightly in jest, but I'm trying to make the comparisons that you can be a leader of a country and want to the best for your country and move unilaterally in your best interest, but you can't when you've got a UEFA football organisation, a Saudi organisation, part of the World Cup, and
Mm.
South American football all have to move together as one. And of course, Infantino hadn't spoken to any of them.
I know that it has been reported that Trump, and I don't know how serious this was, actually wanted Infantino to be UN Secretary General. Now, in one respect, I don't think he could do much worse than some of the recent Secretary Generals.
But he gave him a peace prize, for goodness sake, which was one of the most craven, embarrassing, humiliating gestures in history. I have to say, just on a humour, I was rather looking forward to the idea of there being a World Cup without any European nation. And indeed, by the way, CONCACAF said they were going to boycott it as well, North American teams.
Yes. Let's go to DC, because there's been some, just relatively light Yankee ribbing in this segment, so I think I should give the Americans on the panel a right of reply. Tiffany, the Americanisation of football. Tell me why it's a good thing.
It's not. See, Matthew, we actually agree on something, okay? Football should not be for sale. See, this is where my true Anglophile, the fact that I lived in the UK for so long and truly am inside this body, there is an old British gentleman that lives. You can't tell it, but he's there. And it should not be Americanized. It makes me mad. I hate that there was a halftime show. I hate that we made it into quarters. And it really irritates me, because here's the thing. I love England. I love Britain. That's why I love being on this show. It's why I love talking about British politics, because this country matters to me, and this nation matters to me, and its history and its culture and all the things that some of you guys say don't actually exist. They do exist, and football is inherently very British. And that being said, I don't want it to be homogenized. I don't want it to become another American sport. I don't want it to be just like watching the NFL or baseball. Like, those are quintessentially American things. Football and rugby and those things, those are inherently British and beautiful. And I think that anytime, as you know, I agree with Rodney Marsh, as it was stated, this is a nonprofit organization, and anytime, although I will disagree with you guys totally trumping on Trump and trying to assume that this is all his fault and him trying to be coercive or duplicitous, because the reality is we probably have far more foreign actors from the Middle East and Asia that are trying to buy into FIFA and are trying to make it this privatized organization, because that does down the line consider the possibility of corruption, of maybe you're buying players off of, maybe there's, that kind of backdoor dealing that you don't want in a kind of beautiful world champion like this. So keep football, not American. That's me.
I think, well, A, very well said, and B, I think you are right in suggesting that all sorts of dodgy dealings no doubt take place behind the scenes in the football world every single day, and the United States, I don't think, would be anywhere near the worst offender. But there is something, depending on your point of view, either very refreshing or very jarring that Donald Trump doesn't have a problem basically having those conversations out in the open. Dan, what do you make of this?
Well, knowing that you're an ocean away, I was going to have a comment to say, but after hearing that, I'm a little afraid to say what I wanted to, which is call it soccer.
I would like to jump. Can I just jump in to say thank you very much for your kind words, Tiffany, about England and Britain. And I also, I'm sure the guys in the studio, we love your country as well. I don't love your president, but I love your country. It's a great country.
Dan,
I don't love your prime minister, so there you go.
I don't know anything about Andy Burnham. Give him a chance.
Well, let's Dan, I'll just stick with you on this one. Do you have any further thoughts on the actual potential privatisation plan for FIFA? Sanity has prevailed, I assume.
Well, I understand the arguments against it, but oftentimes when there is privatization, you have more investment, there's more money, there's more opportunity. But as was mentioned, there's also opportunity for corruption as well. Normally, I see privatization as a good thing, but in this case, it seems like that the team has got their opinions, and if we can get this panel to agree, then I think that I think that I'll stop with calling it soccer.
Charlie, it's a secondary point in this saga, but I think it's a point which is worth noting, and that is Andy Burnham felt the need to inject himself into this story. I said on social media the other day, this is a bloke who loves gorging on low-hanging fruit, and it seems increasingly like he will pick up these little stories, which he knows, will have broad popular appeal. Is this increasingly just a distraction from some of the genuinely difficult problems that the country faces?
Oh, totally. I mean, Andy Burnham is a much better skilled communicator than Starmer, but as I said before, it doesn't take much. And so when he's trying to galvanise popularity, at the minute he wants to be Mr. Nice Guy. So anything that he can sort of piggyback on, as you say, that low-hanging fruit, which is a national story which everyone can get behind, he wants to be seen leading the charge, it's only going to help the poll ratings, which I think has happened. But until he actually, really gets stuck into the tougher issues, the issues that really matter to people, like the cost of living crisis. We've got a bit of that's going on, but we've got questions about how all that's going to be paid for. If he can't stop the boats, which can continue to come across the channel into the UK, these are the real big-ticket items that people in the UK really care about. And if he doesn't deliver on those, if he doesn't get a grip on those, then we don't need a Mr. Nice Guy. We want a Prime Minister, a leader of this country.
I would just say that, of course, Andy Burnham's got difficult choices ahead, and he's already starting to grapple with a traditionally difficult area, which is social care, which really matters, and successive prime ministers have tried to sort and have failed to do so. But the communication skills are vital, because one of Starmer's failings was that he wasn't a good communicator. Starmer loved football, but he wasn't really able to communicate.
You backed him no end, Matthew.
Andy Burnham.
You were Starmer's chief
I didn't think that should be a coup. I did, and I'm happy at the moment that it looks like I've been proved wrong. Delighted to be proved wrong in this instance. But Andy Burnham really cares about football. You can see it, you can smell it off him almost through the cameras. He is an Everton fan to his fingertips. And so when he comes out and speaks in the way that he does, it's authentic. And that's what a politician needs to do. They need to play to their strengths. He has got off, like it or not, he has got off to a fabulous start.
You can smell it on him. It really does bring a whole new meaning to the term the Great Unwashed, doesn't it? Now, if you're looking for ways to keep the kids entertained this summer without breaking the bank, perhaps this will come as good news. From today, most under-16s will be able to travel on most local buses in England completely free as part of the government's cost of living support package. This package does date back to the final acts of the Starmer administration. Prime Minister Andy Burnham has since rolled out a series of packages, from VAT cuts of electricity bills and cuts for pubs next year. But are these policies enough, and crucially, are they fully costed? With me now, Labor commentator Simon Nash. Simon, thank you for your time. Two ways of looking at this, I suppose. One is, look, every little bit of help on cost of living is greatly appreciated by families across the country who are doing it tough. But many of them would say when there has never been, or at least since World War II, there hasn't been a higher tax burden in this country. This is pretty insignificant stuff compared to the amount that you're having to give back to the government in the form of taxes every year.
Well, that is a good point. I mean, I'd see them as two separate issues. Look, if you've got 2 or 3 children, those costs add up. A £3 or £4 bus fare, that's nearly £10 to take a couple of kids away on a bus. Whereas if it's limited to £2 and free for under 16s, that really reduces the burden. You'll note as well, Rishi Sunak's Eat Out to Help Out scheme was really successful. It got people into restaurants, and Andy Burnham is sort of emulating this with a reduced VAT rate. So it's down from 20% to 5% for kids' meals in restaurants, which is fantastic. Of course, there's no VAT on kids' clothing. That's been historically good if you have children. Now the same is applying to restaurant meals. This will save families a lot of money, and it will encourage people to eat out as well. So I think it's a win-win.
Yeah, so at the moment, do we know actually whether or not these particular proposals have been costed?
I don't know if they have or not their proposals. They have come into force already. It's a good question. I don't know if they've been costed or not. I would think that this reduced tax rate would increase the number of people eating out. And whilst it will benefit poor people who might not have eaten out much before, and people that eat out already and have to have that burden, maybe it's a children's birthday party or something and they want to eat out for that, they feel that they have to, well, this will save them money, and perhaps the people at the wealthier end will then eat out more, and that will put more money into the system in terms of tax and restaurant revenue.
Simon, we were talking as a panel about Andy Burnham's communication style earlier. Now, again, some people may say that he, particularly with his social media messaging, is communicating with a younger audience. He is more accessible. We saw that clip that went out about a week ago of him comparing his favourite pub snacks with John Healey. There was another one that came out today, which was, what do you call a bacon butty, or what do you call the bread roll that a bacon butty has that you have with it? Is this refreshing and, charming and also very fun and cute, or will it start to grate with people pretty quickly? Because I think I know where I sit on this one.
Well, I mean, where does this sit with you? I'm quite curious. I guess you're on the grating side, but I think, look, he's been in power for 1.5 weeks. I mean, Keir Starmer did a great job. He was a good Prime Minister in lots of ways, but he's very poor at communicating. We are living in a social media age. And Andy Burnham has got lots of genuinely great ideas, and he's explaining how those ideas work, and he's promoting them on social media, and that's really what we need in the Labour Party, what we've needed for a long time.
But Simon, here's the risk, right? And that is, everyone knows at the moment that the times are pretty grim. Everyone knows that the economy's in a bad place. Everyone knows there are real problems around immigration and social cohesion. I don't think many people would tell you that the United Kingdom is at a historical high point. And when you see these types of videos, which is kind of like, fiddling while Rome burns type vibes of, oh, how fun and happy and, delightful everything is, I imagine some people would say, well, stop gaslighting us and actually be serious, because these are serious times. That's the risk.
That is a very small risk. I mean, look, I look to, 3 generations ago. I'm very much over 30 now. I mean, my grandparents didn't have heating when they grew up in their homes. I think my parents didn't have central heating. We've actually come a long way as a country. We all have access to clean water, heating, and largely insulated homes. That is something to be celebrated. There is a lot to... We've got a lot of blessings to count, actually, in the modern world. There are these problems. People are suffering with bills and other things, but there is a lot to be hopeful for. And actually, a more positive view of Britain is something that Andy Burnham is bringing into. I mean, look, 120 years ago, people didn't even have clean water and proper sewage systems. I mean, we do have good sewage systems now. It's unfortunate they overflow into rivers. But again, that's another thing which is to be improved upon, and Andy Burnham is working on in terms of potentially nationalising the water companies to stop all that sewage pollution and reduce bills. So I don't think it's frivolous. But the things he's coming up with and the ideas and the positive vision for Britain, I don't think that's frivolous. Whilst people are suffering, and these are rightly issues that you're talking about, yeah, he's 2 weeks in. Come on, some positivity. That's got to be a good thing, right?
Great. Well, time will tell. But that's all we have time for now, Simon. Thank you very much. Let's go to the panel. Charlie, I'll start with you. And again, in and of itself, despite the fact that I have doubts as to how this will be funded and the costings behind it, are these types of measures really the big issues facing the country? Are they the things that he should be focusing on? Or does he need to build up some political capital in order to actually deal with that stuff?
Look, it's a bit of both, actually. That certainly the latter, building up that capital to get things going. He wants to be seen as someone that's delivering, when the last government didn't seem to deliver on very much, on what it was delivering on. It wasn't what anybody asked for. So, he's got to get off to some sort of start. But I have to say, I'm a big fan of Simon Dearly, and I don't extend him in this conversation. But the amount of people on the left and Labour supporters that have come onto this programme, and many others, to say how wonderful this is. Andy Burnham, you taking that 20% off VAT off hospitality. Fantastic. Capping the bus fares at £2. They were £2 under Rishi Sunak. It was Keir Starmer that put them up to £3. It was Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves that introduced national insurance contributions on small business rates on the hospitality sector, and included an increase in the national minimum wage, which put our hospitality sector at risk. Andy Burnham is literally undoing the things that Keir Starmer got wrong and Rachel Reeves got fundamentally wrong, But they were applauded by, guess what, over 400 Labour backbenchers in the House of Commons that were agreeing with Starmer and Rachel Reeves for all of this. So how can you have people from the Labour Party or the left that now come out to sort of, get wheeled out, gladly to say how fantastic Andy Burnham is doing? He's righting the wrongs of 2 years of a failed Labour government, of which the Labour backbench MPs all supported. It is a complete con in that sense.
Hang on, Charlie. What wasn't the case with hospitality that there was some pandemic relief and then that had to be or was eased back? And now some of that...
Rightly so, under the Tories.
Some of it has been returned. But listen, I think what is... God, I'm starting to sound like that chap Gary's economics saying, listen the whole time. What I want to say...
That's not a good thing, by the way.
What I want to say is this. It's very important to have some positivity as an incoming Prime Minister, but you've also got to have a healthy dose of reality. And one thing that Burnham, I'm sure, is trying not to do, and I'm about to give you one very obvious example, is he's trying not to overpromise, only then to underdeliver. You mentioned Rishi Sunak. Rishi Sunak effectively told us he was going to stop the boats. Keir Starmer told us he was going to smash the gangs. What is Burnham's approach? Burnham's approach is basically to try not to talk about it at all. Not because he's unaware that it's an issue. He just fought and won convincingly the Makerfield by-election. Hang on, Makerfield that area had gone to reform, hadn't it, in the locals? So he knows on the doorstep that the boats and other issues to do with illegal and legal immigration matter to people. The Daily Mail is desperate. It's had, at least two front pages this week about the boats. Burnham is clever. He's setting the agenda. And while, of course, he's going to need to be scrutinised, and it's deeply unfortunate that Parliament isn't sitting now for this new Prime Minister, but nonetheless, he's been very savvy with the way that he is shaping the agenda.
Well, he's done very well to right the wrongs of the last 2 years under the Labour government, but he's had a year, we were told, Louise Haigh revealed it, a year that he's been preparing for this job, and we're seeing more small boat crossings come across, and we will see more. We will see more. 752 today, I think, was the largest number. 752 today, 752, I think, is the largest number that came over this year, and that will only get higher as we get into August. Now the weather,
we've had some of the hottest weather we've ever had in this country, Charlie, and they were down.
And that's why we've got why we've got the highest number of people that have come over today in some very good
it's
weather.
Been hot for months. And where have you been living? It's been hot month after month. The channel crossings are down. The gangs are having to adapt, actually, because the French, at least to some extent, seem to have been doing their job.
The boats might be down, but the numbers of people might still be up. You never know. They might just be bigger boats.
Well, they are bigger boats. We do know that.
We know they're bigger boats.
The people who've come across, the numbers are down. We know that. Some credit where it's due.
Look, I in many respects, to continue on the footballing theme that we had earlier in the conversation, think this is like being happy about a 6-1 loss just because you got belted 8-0 in the previous season. The numbers are down, but they are still far, far too high. And until it gets down to 0, I don't think you can be happy on this. I think this is very much a binary policy issue, as countries like America or Australia have proven. You can get that number down to 0, and until you do, that is a fail in my book.
Well, you can't get that number down to 0, I don't think, unless you work effectively with your European neighbours, because what we see so often in this debate in this country, it's as though we are the only people... It's as though we are the only people vulnerable to illegal migration, and that is just not the case. The French take many more people than we do. Look at Germany, look at Italy, look at other countries and the numbers that they are taking in. If you pretend that we can get this figure down to 0 when we live in a continent, not in the EU, but we live in a continent, my view, it's fantasy politics.
No, but this is the point. Nobody has a problem, actually, with taking in refugees. And I don't actually think it's about the numbers if you get down to the root and branch of it, like we did for Ukraine, which was a brilliant scheme, of which I remember being in government and we were part of. But it's the people that are coming over. They are not refugees. The people that are crossing the channel in the small boats.
But that's
they are
the same
economic
for the French.
migrants.
It's the same for other European countries. It's not an exclusively British problem.
So
by the way, some of them are genuine asylum seekers. Some of them definitely are.
And we pay them to try and help them to stop the flow of people coming in, but they choose to take our money and still wave people off the shore.
Because if the French really wanted to stop them, the whole thing is a farce. If the French really wanted to stop them, and they have stopped 46,000 attempt.
Which is about
but if
30%.
they really wanted to solve it, in my view, and this is probably for domestic political reasons they haven't done it, if they really want to stop it, the way they do it is say, we'll take everyone back. And then we could have safe routes and we could accept our responsibility and take a certain number of people from France. The French, I think, hold the key.
Well, the French are punishing us because of Brexit.
I suspect so, yes.
Which is a disgrace. Stop. Matthew, my question would be, if the United States has a land border with Mexico and they can get their number down to near enough to zero, we have a channel which separates us from the rest from the continent. Why can't we get it down zero?
Because there's rules of the sea. So there's an international rule of the sea that if someone's in trouble, and if you're in a rubber dinghy, by definition you're in trouble, even if you put yourself in that position, and you have to rescue people. We can't, as we know, take people back to France, so we take them here. And once they're here, we have responsibilities to them under the laws that we are signed up to.
Well, time will tell. Still ahead on The Late Show Live, ladies and gentlemen.
The eyes to the right were 304, the nose to the left 203. So the eyes have it, the eyes have it.
Well, it might have passed last time, but Andy Burnham has reportedly shared his concerns about plans to reduce the number of jury trials and wants to look at the details of the proposals. So just how does the new Prime Minister plan to deal with the backlog in our courts? This is The Late Show Live on the People's Channel, GBNews.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Warm sunshine for many of us through today, though a little bit cooler than it has been earlier on this week. A few showers still for more northwestern areas as well. It's a bit of a cloudier start across parts of western Scotland in particular. Some of these showers will push further east into eastern Scotland, some eastern areas of northern England. Perhaps the odd shower in the far north of Wales, but for many parts of England and Wales it should remain pretty dry through much of today. Plenty of sunshine as well. UV levels will be high and it will still feel quite hot in the sunshine, with temperatures reaching 26 degrees in the southeast, quite widely in the low 20s for more central areas of England. Tonight it remains pretty dry for much of the UK, even though showers tending to fade away. It's just the Northern Isles seeing a few lingering into the evening. So for much of Scotland, a dry night to come, but a breeze will continue holding temperatures up a little bit higher across more western areas. Across the shelter, though, it will be another quite fresh night ahead. Plenty of clear skies. A bit of mist and fog could develop overnight as well. The sunshine may be a little bit hazier to end the day across the very far south of England in particular, but plenty of dry weather overnight. We've got a ridge of high pressure still with us. The winds pick up a little bit across the far north of Scotland to northerly winds, so that will bring quite a chilly feel to start the day on Sunday here. Elsewhere, plenty of clear skies. As I said, a bit of mist and fog. Towns and cities just about double digits, but rurally could be down into the mid single figures to start the day on Sunday, particularly across the north and east. There's a change on Sunday to wetter conditions by the end of the day, but lots of sunshine ahead of that. Perhaps a little less sunshine compared to Saturday for some of us, but it's going to still feel quite warm. We're starting to pick up some warmer air once again through Sunday, so temperatures climbing towards the higher 20s. And on Monday, it's set to be a little bit warmer once again. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Here at GB News, we made a promise to tell your stories. And on the 6th of August, we're marking 5 years of doing exactly that.
Celebrate with us by having your say. Join in the debates live on TV and radio.
And meeting your favourite presenters across the country, from Leeds to Aberdeen, from Belfast to Barry Island.
Plus, join me in Essex for our biggest live show of the year. Scan the QR code or visit gbnews.com/celebrate. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Well, Americans outside the nation's capital will soon be able to get limited edition passports that feature a picture of Donald Trump and celebrate the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States, the State Department has announced. The department's 27 passport agencies nationwide will start offering these special travel documents next month. They previously had only been available at the Washington, D.C. passport office for in-person applicants. Trump, whose stern portrait is emblazoned on an inside page, is the first living president featured in the travel document. The government plans to issue more than 250,000 of the passports nationally and has dubbed them Patriot passports. Let's go to DC first. Tiffany, are you going to be picking up one of these bad boys?
Absolutely, as is my entire family. And I'm not even kidding. Like, my mom and my sister and my grandmother have already discussed it. And also, I'm going to be a little vain for a moment. The picture I have in my current passport, which I'm using as my real ID, because here in the States, you have to have this new thing called real ID, and I've been too lazy to go get one. So the passport counts. My picture's horrible, you guys. It's so bad, I don't recognize myself. So it's two birds, one stone. I get a better picture, and I get to see President Trump, my bestie, the best president I've ever had and ever known. I had to say that for Matthew's benefit.
Dan, obviously critics will say that this is in poor taste. They'll also say that this is not in the spirit of being president, that basically it shouldn't be about the individual person, it should be about the country, it should be about what the role symbolises, etc., etc. Where do you fall here?
So I'm kind of falling directly in the middle here. If President Trump wants to put his picture on the passport, then let him do it. I mean, he is a master when it comes to trolling those who absolutely hate him. But I think that there is a balance here, because everything that President Trump does is not inherently good, and it's not inherently bad. There are people out there that just, no matter what Trump is going to do, they're going to think it's the worst thing ever, and they'll just breathe life into these absurd narratives. I mean, that Trump derangement syndrome is real. I mean, if the left were to say, if Trump were to say to the left that oxygen was awesome, they'd try to start suffocating themselves. I mean, it really makes very little sense that Trump is this polarizing character. And again, if he wants to have his picture in the passport, let him do it.
There's only 250 of them. It's not like that's every passport. It's 250,000.
Yeah, absolutely. And if he wants to have his name on the Kennedy Center, let him. That's fine. And the thing is, there'll be someone else to come in and take it all down eventually anyway.
So I've already said on this show, and I'm a left-leaning person, that I stand against so much of what Trump stands for. But if he were to achieve peace in the Middle East, good on him. So that disproves, I think, at least anecdotally, what you were saying there. There have been 4 Labour prime ministers in our country, 4 left-wing prime ministers in our country during my lifetime. There's been Blair, Brown, Starmer,
this year, right?
No, sorry. Yeah. And I can tell you, I am not a fan of any of them. I've voted for them or voted for the Labour Party. But the idea of loving your leader, for me, is almost anti-democratic. These people need to be scrutinised. There should be a distance between leader and the people. We had Jeremy Corbyn. He never became Prime Minister. I didn't vote for Labour under him, actually. And he had a sort of cultish following. Boris Johnson had a cultish following. There's an extent to which Nigel Farage has a cultish following. I think this stuff is quite unhealthy and fundamental and foundational to your society, your great country, is the idea that you don't have kings. And the narcissist in the Oval Office is beginning to act a bit like one.
Could I ask you a question? Could I ask you a question, Matthew?
Sure.
I just wanted to say, but you do have a monarchy, and you do have the Queen and the King on your documents. You do have it on your pound notes. And going back, look about Winston Churchill. You had Winston Churchill until very recently, when he's been replaced with badgers and birds. So how is it any different? We have the coinage. We have our presidents on our coinage. So I really don't see the difference. He's never once said that he's a king or acted like it. Quite the contrary. We have more checks and balances here than you do.
Yeah, there's a profound difference.
How so?
Well, I'm about to explain it to you. Because your head of state, unlike our head of state, actually runs your country. So our prime ministers run our country, not our monarchy. So therefore, to have the monarch on our insignatory, on our passport, wherever the monarch is, on our pound notes, whatever, that's one thing. But they don't actually have any meaningful power over us. Winston Churchill...
What about Churchill?
Well, I'm about to come to that. You can make arguments for and against that, but he's a historical figure from many decades ago. The idea that we would put Andy Burnham on our £10 notes, to the extent we still have £10 notes, I can promise you it would never happen. If Farage becomes Prime Minister, it might happen, but while sanity rules, it would not.
I don't think that will be the case, but again, time will tell. Charlie, your thoughts on this?
Well, funny enough, I was going to say I don't mind it, to be fair, because as Tiffany was saying, look, I like the fact that the head of state, and obviously it's the monarch in this country, it's the president of the United States in the US, it features on some of our documentation, and I would rather have, a red hot Churchill on my £50 note if ever I was ever paid that much, than some wet beaver that we're now. I'm on GB News. At 1 o'clock in the morning and coming up to 2 a.m. What do you think?
Just as a reminder, Charlie, there are still people watching. This is still an internationally broadcast television show.
Oh well,
just before you can't get too many ideas.
I'm very cheap, as you probably tell. But I would rather have people of significance, people that have made a contribution, whether I've been for them or voted against them or whatever, than as Tiffany was saying, these ideas of bees and badgers on our banknotes.
Well, a follow-up question on that, Charlie, and I will ask this of everyone on the panel: who would you actually want on your passport if you could get it custom made?
George Washington.
Okay, Tiffany will go with George Washington.
Lincoln.
Abe Lincoln, two good choices. Charlie?
Abraham Lincoln.
Will Kingston.
Yeah. I love it. I absolutely love it. I think that's a great answer. Matthew.
I'm actually very happy with the royal signature, if that's how you describe it. But if I had to choose a person, I think it would probably be Joe Root.
Joe Root. Okay. I'll go with Ned Kelly. Ned Kelly, Australian bushranger, pioneering spirit, or Don Bradman. For the Americans watching, the greatest cricketer of all time.
Better than Sobers? Sir Garfield?
Yeah, and rest in peace. Oh, sorry, take it all back. Warney. We're putting Warney on my passport. Easy answer.
Are you guys keeping up over there?
Yeah, we're doing a Warney branded passport. That's a great idea. Okay, let's move on to more substantive matters. Andy Burnham has shared his concerns about plans to reduce the number of jury trials and wants to look in detail at the proposals. Former Justice Secretary David Lammy said reducing the number of jury trials would help tackle the huge backlog in Crown Court cases, but critics, including most barristers and many Labor MPs, fear it will undermine the justice system. The bill, which is set to return to the Commons for a third reading in the autumn, strips defendants of the right to opt for jury trials. Instead, they would face a judge-only or magistrate's court if they are likely to be sentenced to less than 3 years in prison. It comes after the Prime Minister also pressed pause on a scheme which would have seen thousands of prisoners in England and Wales eligible for early release. Charlie, I'll go to you first on this. This was one of, I would suggest, many policies under the Starmer government in which a huge amount of political capital was expended for very little to no benefit. There was no real evidence that this would substantively influence the backlog, and yet you had a lot of people in this country suggesting that you are attacking one of the fundamental tenets of the justice system in the United Kingdom, being jury trials. So my instinct here is that Burnham's review of this policy and hopefully ditching of this policy is smart politics.
Yeah, and look, in the spirit of goodwill and everything on a Friday night, credit where credit's due. He's looking at this policy that was, where there was going to be this shake-up of jury trials, which was going to limit, actually, the number of jury trials that sit, that it was going to be handed down to just a judge and maybe two other people advising. That would not be in line with what has lasted for hundreds of years in our judicial system. He's also, by the way, again, to give him credit, looking at and has paused the early release of prisoners scheme, which, again, was something that Keir Starmer was keen to push forward. So I'll give credit to Andy Burnham on these two issues because they are substantial issues that the public were not at ease with. But you had 400 Labour MPs cheering away these policies. They loved them. They were supporting them under David Lammy, under Keir Starmer. So I'm all for Andy Burnham, seeing the light if he's been on the outside and, has gone amongst the people to know how fundamentally wrong these policies were in the first place, and he's correcting that. But, MPs in the House of Commons, the Labour Party has got a lot to answer for pushing this in the first place and having to row back. drag. But I do agree that we should be having these jury trials. They should remain as they always have been, to give people an absolute fair hearing. Barristers didn't want it, the legal profession didn't want it. It was a complete waste of time. We also don't want early release of our prisoners, some who would be actually quite hard and fast criminals, not just people who, I mean, I think petty theft is not petty at all, but, you know, lower-end criminals, as it were. They shouldn't be, you know, they wouldn't just be the ones that are released. Hard and fast criminals would be too. It's right that the government has looked at it.
Matthew?
I would say, look, I was against that particular policy, and I do think a lot of capital was expended on it. But you've got to accept, at least, that the government found itself in a really difficult position. I'm not going to mention the 14 years, but if you come in and you find your justice system in a total mess, justice delayed is, to an extent, justice denied. So this was a really tough choice that the government was having to make. They believed, I think as a consequence of a review, that it would make a difference to reduce the number of trials, not scrap jury trials altogether, but reduce the number of trials that had juries. But as I say, I didn't agree with that policy, and I welcome Andy Burnham looking back at it. The early release of prisoners, that started under the Conservatives. When this government came to power 2 years ago, there were just 100 free prison spaces in the adult male prison estate. Now, if you don't start letting people out early, and obviously you don't want to let rapists out early and very serious offenders out early, of course not, and again I welcome Andy Burnham looking at that, but if you don't do that, you have to face the consequences of your decision, and that would be that fewer people in the future would be able to be sent to prison.
But this is the same government that wanted to lock people up for hurty words on Twitter.
Oh, come on.
Well, that's what happened. That is exactly what happened.
We had appalling riots 2 years ago, and a message had to be sent out to people that if you threaten to go and burn down asylum hotels, or indeed if you incite that sort of violence, you are going to have to pay a heavy price, because you can't have a functioning country if you have people rioting around the place.
Dan, I'll go to you in the States on the concept of jury trials. Again, the proposal wasn't to scrap jury trials entirely, but it was to limit them for where there would be a sentence of below 2 years. Still, this sends a message, really, that you are undermining one of the fundamental principles of the justice system, and this is the country of Magna Carta. This is the country that the United States initially based, in many ways, its judicial system on. It would have been, again, if this does go ahead, and it sounds like now it probably won't, we will see, this would have been very concerning.
Right. This is not only concerning, this is frightening. When a government is out there trying to take away or to limit your rights and liberties under the guise of efficiency, that's showing that your government, A, is not working, and B, is there to take away your rights. And if they're going to do it for this, they'll do it for something else. And that jury trial is fundamental, because if you do have a quarrel with, say, the government, you're going to have some sort of redress there. And in that jury trial, again, even though the courts might be packed and they might be busy, get some leadership, do your jobs, clean it up, but do not allow anyone to take away your rights and liberties. Absolutely not. It's frightening.
Tiffany, let me throw a different angle at you. And, you know, I studied as a lawyer, I'm admitted as a lawyer back in Australia. I believe in the principle of jury trials, but I wonder about how practical jury trials are in an increasingly multicultural society, in that you now have particular parts of the population where you have areas which are majority ethnic or say a particular majority religious group. There are particular ethnic groups and cultural groups now in the United Kingdom that have very strong in-group preferences. If, for example, we were to have a rape gang case in Bradford or in Rochdale, and that was to go before the courts there, and you had a majority Islamic jury, are there now questions as to whether or not you can trust the integrity of jury trials given the in-group preferences of many cultural groups in this country?
I would say yes. And, you know, looking back at this, there's 80,000 backlogged cases, first of all. Let's throw that number out there. So I will actually also agree with Charlie and Matthew saying that, you know, Andy Burnham is trying to undo a wrong here. I do think that is true. I think that, you know, and I went to law school as well, so I know it's a little bit different on your side of the pond versus my side, but what I will say is that it's very important, especially here in America, when you look at jury selection, and I don't know, you can speak more to this, but jury selection here is very rigorous, and if there's, it has to be well balanced, it has to be fair, it can't be prejudiced, whether that's background, sex, ethnicity. It needs to be very, very balanced, and there's a lot that goes into that. And that does take up time, obviously, but it is very much an integral part of the jury, trial process. So maintaining that integrity in this situation would be huge, very, very important. And so you need to make sure that where these jury trials are taking place, that the jury is made up of an equal and fair group of peers, not just all Pakistani or all white Brits or all, Chinese or Indian or whoever it is, whether that's religious or political, whatever. And so that needs to be ensured, but also this judicial system is hundreds of years old, and to go against that and to go against tradition, against the understanding of where the Magna Carta was, like as you said, created, and really what has set the precedent in the entire international community for fair and just law, I think that's also dangerous.
Charlie, I just want your thoughts on that. And again, I pose it as a thought, but the increasing question marks over the integrity of jury trials in a multicultural and fractured society.
Yeah, look, and I think you get invited to serve on jury trials in relation to the local Crown Court, maybe that that's in your postal code, your postal district, but the clerk will weed out, I think, people who might not be suitable, and just to try and make sure that they have the balance. But very quickly, I was going to say to Dan's point, the way in which you solve the backlog is not by watering down justice and changing the trials, as he was saying. You have actual courts that can sit, 5 days a week, 7 days a week, open up council buildings. Councillors don't sit in their chambers having meetings, Monday to Friday, 9 till 5 every day. We've got the lawyers. And we've got the space. We just need to piece the two together to get through the backlog of justice.
So I agree with Charlie on that. I'm going to push back very heavily on what Will has just said, because it seemed to me that you were insinuating that if there were a rape gang trial, that there's somehow an in-group preference amongst Pakistani Brits for child rapists, which is obviously an outrageous slur. And as we know, there are many gangs from outside Pakistani British communities.
How do you reconcile the fact that for so long there were communities that were aware of these crimes that were being committed, and yet they weren't reported? They were aware of crimes in many instances, and they were aided and abetted by local communities who had the knowledge of these crimes taking place. Of course there is an in-group preference.
You're saying there's an in-group preference for child rapists?
No, there isn't.
For child rapists amongst British Pakistanis, it's an outrageous and bigoted thing to suggest. And there's no evidence of it whatsoever. There's no evidence of that whatsoever.
Not all cultures
any more than that there's any more than that there is in-group preference for child rapists amongst white British people. That's outrageous, and this is a complete red herring. You're trying to divert a really important, actually, conversation about the future of our justice system and trying to be divisive. You're talking about our fractured society, Will. You are the one who is doing the fracturing.
All right. More coming up in the next hour, ladies and gentlemen, including this.
Our national conversations about immigration continue to divide us.
The Archbishop of Canterbury has reignited the row over slavery reparations after backing the Church of England's controversial £100 million fund for communities affected by the transatlantic slave trade. Is this righting a wrong or virtue signalling? We'll discuss that on The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Warm sunshine for many of us through today, though a little bit cooler than it has been earlier on this week. A few showers still for more northwestern areas as well. It's a bit of a cloudier start across parts of western Scotland in particular. Some of these showers will push further east into eastern Scotland, some eastern areas of northern England, perhaps the odd shower in the far north of Wales, but for many parts of England and Wales it should remain pretty dry through much of today. Plenty of sunshine as well. UV levels will be high, and it will still feel quite hot in the sunshine, with temperatures reaching 26 degrees in the southeast, quite widely in the low 20s for more central areas of England. Tonight it remains pretty dry for much of the UK, even though showers tending to fade away. It's just the Northern Isles seeing a few lingering into the evening. So for much of Scotland, a dry night to come, but a breeze will continue holding temperatures up a little bit higher across more western areas. Across the shelter, though, it will be another quite fresh night ahead. Plenty of clear skies, a bit of mist and fog could develop overnight as well. The sunshine may be a little bit hazier to end the day across the very far south of England in particular, but plenty of dry weather overnight. We've got a ridge of high pressure still with us. The winds pick up a little bit across the far north of Scotland to northerly winds, so that will bring quite a chilly feel to start the day on Sunday here. Elsewhere, plenty of clear skies. As I said, a bit of mist and fog. Towns and cities just about double digits, but rurally could be down into the mid single figures to start the day on Sunday, particularly across the north and east. There's a change on Sunday to wetter conditions by the end of the day, but lots of sunshine ahead of that. Perhaps a little less sunshine compared to Saturday for some of us, but it's going to still feel quite warm. We're starting to pick up some warmer air once again through Sunday, so temperatures climbing towards the higher 20s. And on Monday, it's set to be a little bit warmer once again. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Here at GB News, we made a promise to tell your stories. And on the 6th of August, we're marking 5 years of doing exactly that.
Celebrate with us by having your say. Join in the debates live on TV and radio.
And meeting your favourite presenters across the country, from Leeds to Aberdeen, from Belfast to Barry Island.
Plus, join me in Essex for our biggest live show of the year. Scan the QR code or visit gbnews.com/celebrate. Terms and conditions apply.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis. In the car.
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there. With the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again.
To start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter? So that's a very live question. Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way. You will not want to miss it, trust me.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Live from London, England, this is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America.
You know, I saw Spain yesterday, and I watched the catastrophe that took place. It looks like an invasion of a country by hundreds of thousands of people.
Giorgia Meloni has confirmed she is suspending the EU's border-free Schengen arrangements with Spain in response to the chaos we've seen in the Spanish enclave of Ceuta. Is Europe going to heed President Trump's warnings and get serious on illegal migration? And
we're committed to ensuring Gaza is demilitarized, properly governed, and beautifully rebuilt.
Well, President Trump has declared a breakthrough in negotiations after the Board of Peace reached an agreement for the complete disarmament of Hamas and other terror groups in Gaza. However, I have my doubts as to how much a deal with a genocidal death cult can be really trusted. Also,
our national conversations about immigration continue to divide us.
yes, we'll be covering this at the top of this hour. The Archbishop of Canterbury has reignited the row over slavery reparations after backing the Church of England's controversial £100 million fund for communities affected by the transatlantic slave trade. Is she righting a wrong, or is this just yet more virtue signalling from the Church? And
do you still want to find a way
to not have a fund? But there are a lot of people that are very upset about it. A lot of Republican people, a lot of Democrat people are very upset about it.
President Trump is facing internal opposition in the Republican Party on his controversial $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund aimed to compensate January 6th defendants. So just how secure is President Trump's control over his party? And well, is the Musk-Trump love affair back on? It is reported that Elon Musk is jumping back into the political fray ahead of the midterms with a new field program to help elect Republicans in at least 8 states. But is this a matter of his money, his choice? Or should the world's first trillionaire keep his money out of politics? I'm Will Kingston, and this is The Late Show Live. Welcome back to The Late Show Live for a third and final hour, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for staying with us. And thank you to my panel, who haven't left the studios as of yet, despite the conversation getting spicier. It is in London, of course, political commentators Matthew Stadland and Charlie Rowley, and in Washington, DC, political strategist and podcast host Tiffany Marie Brannan and communications strategist Dan Reen. Thank you once again, team. Let's go to the main news at the top of this hour, and that is the Archbishop of Canterbury has reignited the row over slavery reparations after backing the Church of England's controversial £100 million fund for communities affected by the transatlantic slave trade. During a visit to Cape Coast Castle in Ghana, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Dame Sarah Mullally, said, "I pray not only in lament for the Church's involvement in the slave trade, but also for hope that the God of healing can bring justice and reconciliation to all who are still impacted by its legacy. In the name of Jesus Christ, who came to set people free, I pray that we have the courage to continue our journey of repentance and to strive for a world in which all of God's children are treated with dignity." However, critics argue the Church should focus on struggling parishes at home rather than historic reparations. So is this a moral responsibility or money that could be better spent elsewhere? Let's go to the panel. Charlie, I'll start with you. Again, this isn't in isolation. We've seen several woke stories coming out of the Church of England in recent years. Again, I don't have a problem necessarily with the Church spending money on disadvantaged communities all around the world. I guess that's kind of what churches are really there for. But why do they have to frame it in this sort of politically contentious way? We know that the slavery reparations debate is politically toxic. Why didn't they just say, look, we're going to help disadvantaged communities, as opposed to making this sort of grander point around trying to make up for the sins of the past?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think there is a way in which you can, where there are communities right across the world that are struggling far more maybe than the UK, and, in the Christian faith, it is absolutely right that churches will want to do that, obviously particularly the Archbishop of Canterbury, that is effectively the head of our Church of England. That is a good thing to do. There are communities in the UK where the church is growing again, actually, where we are seeing more people, I think particularly more young men coming back to church because they're they're looking for faith and hope. I mean, I had to say my prayers before coming in when I knew you were on, Matthew. But there are people in a more serious way that are looking for that kind of support where they might have had it previously. So there is a lot that the church can do, the Church of England can do for its communities back home. There will will always be people asking for the reparations or asking for compensation for things that the UK, the Empire might have done in the past. I just think that, if you want to apologise for that, you apologise for that. If you want to, and pray, for forgiveness, and I don't say that flippantly, I'm genuinely sort of, talking about the way in which the church can sort of work to move forward to heal with those communities, then fine. But I'm not entirely sure, as you say, packaging it up as a sort of a £1 million reparations fund and £100 million reparations fund, and sort of saying, right, there we are, we've done our bit, there we are, let's shut this debate down. I just don't think that's the way that we work.
Yeah, Matthew, forgive me for saying the bleeding obvious, but many, if not most, Christians are socially conservative people. This is the type of political statement which many of them would find unpalatable, and yet she goes ahead with it anyway. I just think that this is an unnecessary way of trying to help people.
My worry about it, but of course I'm not a spokesperson for the Church of England, my worry about it would be that you don't know where you stop. If you start in this particular community, well, what about other affected communities? And we know that, unfortunately, in the past, the church did a lot of bad as well as a lot of good. Now, I hear what the Archbishop of Canterbury says, that forgiveness, part of forgiveness, which is absolutely essential to the Christian faith, but part of forgiveness is actually action. So actions speak louder than the words. But nonetheless, there is a political element to the Church of England, and consistency matters. And I worry that they might possibly, I don't know the history of it and how often this happens, but I worry that they might have bitten off a bit more than they can chew. The thing that really struck me about that article, though, is just a reminder, when you read about it in its granular detail, of the true evil of the slave trade. And yes, of course, our country played a really important role in putting an end to slavery, but by God, we played our part as well.
We did, but Tiffany, at the same time, slavery has been a consistent evil throughout human history. There was a white slave trade. Ireland, among many other countries, was ravaged by slavery, and yet you don't often hear for reparations for the descendants of the Irish men and women who were sold into slavery by the Barbary pirates, amongst other groups. It always seems to always go one way, based on the fashionable left-wing progressive narrative of the time.
Yeah, reparations are absurd. And it's because it's the same principle of, if you give a mouse a cookie, it's gonna ask for a glass of milk. And as your point, America in her infancy faced a large problem with the Barbary pirates taking the colonists and taking the people that were trying to, establish us as a country. So you don't see us going to Tangiers, Morocco's, Algeria, that entire north coast of Africa, and saying, well, hey, you owe us reparations. No, because and I'm a Christian, and I actually went to divinity school at St. Andrews up in freezing Scotland, and my faith is very important to me. I'm quite devout. That being said, it is not the church's place to go around promising £100 million for reparations that I do agree are they've bit off more than they can chew, based on basically political ideology that has no place in the church. I think Sarah Mullally is a horrific Archbishop of Canterbury. I think that particular seat has become more politically corrupted than other areas of the Church of England. We saw it back when Justin was during the whole Meghan Markle, Prince Harry, debacle. But I do think that there is a real danger to opening up this can of worms and to once again politicizing the church, which should be neutral. It should not be a place for political reparations to even be a part of the conversation. We should offer forgiveness. We should offer charity, but out of the goodness of our hearts, because we want to be more Christ-like and more God-like, not because we're going to do some political organization as penance for something that we didn't do, that happened hundreds of years ago.
And of course, I would imagine that if a representative of the Church of England was here, they would dispute that they had become politically corrupted. But be that as it may, Dan, the slavery reparations debate comes up in America from time to time. It's obviously an analogous conversation. Where do you sit on this?
So we can all agree, everyone can agree, that slavery was evil. And there's no question about it. However, there's no one involved today in slavery. There's no one involved today in the slave trade. And so to punish people today for paying the bill for something that happened hundreds of years ago is completely absurd. So what we have to figure out here is, if we want to try to figure out a pathway towards a penance out there, it's not to punish the churchgoers today. It's not to punish the taxpayers today. It's to find a way to make investments and to finding a pathway so that everyone can benefit from this. So that there's no possible way that we can solve the problems of yesterday. We can only look for tomorrow and try to find a pathway there to make tomorrow better. And so rather than paying reparations and doing that, again, as a sort of penance, invest in tomorrow, find a pathway that raises everyone up, and that's going to be beneficial to all.
Yeah, I agree with that. The other thing which frustrates me about the historic guilt that the left displays so often is it's never done as a cost-benefit analysis. You never say, well, look, as with all parts of history, there were bad bits, but, you know, you look at, say, English imperialism as an example. In the English Empire, it brought rule of law, it brought technology, innovation, rights for women, democracy to some of the darkest corners of the world. But you never hear the good bits of empire along with some of the evils. And I always think that if you were to actually weigh up the value of all of those benefits that were brought by the British Empire to go along with, admittedly, the evils of the past, the ledger would be well and truly in Britain's favour. Let's go to our next story, and that is that President Donald Trump has erupted in a lengthy rant today over his stalled anti-weaponisation fund. His taxpayer-funded $1.7 billion fund dedicated to awarding payouts to January 6th Capitol Hill riot participants, who he claimed had been hunted down like dogs.
Do you still want to find a way?
They've agreed to not have a fund. But there are a lot of people that are very upset about it. A lot of Republican people, a lot of Democrat people are very upset about it.
Taking to Truth Social, Trump singled out Senator John Cornyn, who has vowed to withhold his support for acting Attorney General Todd Blanche's confirmation, I should say, until the fund was eliminated, much to the frustration of the president. So, is the president losing control of the Republican Party? With me now, Republican strategist and friend of the show, Matthew Hurt. Matthew, good to see you once again. Bring me up to speed with this story.
Absolutely. So President Trump met with a number of his cabinet officials in Camp David. That is an historic camp about 90 miles north of Washington, D.C. today. There are two United States senators that you just mentioned, Will, John Cornyn from Texas and Tom Tillis from North Carolina, who are both out at the end of their terms. One lost in a primary earlier this year. President Trump endorsed his primary opponent. The important thing here is that Article 2, Section 2 of the United States Constitution requires that the United States Senate advise and consent, that is, give their consent to the nomination of somebody like Attorney General Todd Blanche. And it appears that these two Republican senators, because of the $1.8 billion fund that President Trump wants to establish, are on the fence or even in opposition to confirming Todd Blanche in the Judiciary Committee and on the Senate floor.
Where do you stand on this fund, this anti-weaponisation fund that Trump is trying to establish? I guess when it comes to January 6th, there were certainly, from what I could see, some protesters who you could argue were arrested for and charged for politically motivated reasons. At the same time, there were others who, without doubt, committed crimes on January 6th and should have been punished for those crimes. So how do you weigh up those two factors when you think of this fund that Trump is building?
It's an excellent question, Will. I have been on this program a number of times in opposition to the fund. I am still opposed to the fund. I think there are two pathways to seek out, actually, in fact, reparations if you think that you've been done wrong. And one is through our court system. So if somebody is done wrong by the government or by another party, they could engage and sue the federal government. The other thing is being able to raise money privately for any wrong that was is done. We have a very generous culture, a very generous country here at in the United States, and people would fund those efforts. I do think that the Department of Justice has attempted to move away from this promise of a $1.8 billion fund. But of course, President Trump just a few hours ago on Truth Social continued his support for the fund. So there are conflicting reports which have upset both Senator Tillis and Senator Cornyn, keeping them on the fence or in opposition to confirmation of Mr. Blanche.
And of course, Trump is moving towards what is traditionally the lame duck period of any presidency, being the final 2 years of the second term. You will always have the odd dissident in any political party, but is this potentially a sign that Trump's hold over the Republican Party may finally be starting to wane?
I think that President Trump still has a pretty firm grasp on the Republican Party. In almost every primary contest this year, the Trump-endorsed candidate has won and will go to the general election. But this does show a stark difference between the way American politics works and British politics. Members of the Prime Minister's cabinet usually come from the House of Commons or the House of Lords. If they are private citizens, they are offered a peerage quite often. In the United States, the political parties are much like empty vessels that are filled with the people who show up. So President Trump still has a strong grasp on the Republican Party, but it isn't quite as strong as, say, a parliamentary government where you sort of pledge allegiance to the political party that you represent when you stand for election.
Matthew, always a pleasure to speak to you. Chat again soon. That was Republican strategist Matthew Hurt. Let's go to the panel now. I'll start in DC. Dan, do you agree with this fund?
So I agree with the fund as it was established through a legal settlement. The fact of the matter is that this isn't a fund that Trump wanted or that the Attorney General wanted. This was established as a result of a legal settlement because Donald Trump was targeted by a weaponized Department of Justice. President Biden and President Obama weaponized that department against their political enemies. They spied on campaigns. They did all kinds of things out there, and it cost a lot of people a lot of money. It costs a lot of people their reputations, their livelihoods, and that's a lot that it's really tough to get back. And so, yeah, maybe they might be able to win in a courtroom or try to get some of that money back, but you don't get your reputation back. You have to fight for that. And so this fund wasn't set up for January 6th defendants. This was a fund set up for those who were victims of a weaponized government that went against them. And so that means that, this could be for something that if there was someone out there that was a Democrat that felt the government weaponized against them, they could try to appeal and try to make their case. But I think that the left has tried to make this fund into something that it's not. And even though this was something that was a big holding up of the nomination for the Attorney General, I think that we see these two senators, Tillis and Cornyn, just acting petty because Trump is not going to be supporting them, and Trump endorsed their opponents. And so for a body of the Senate that is full of 80-year-olds, they sure are acting like it's a daycare. It really is just sour grapes out there.
Well, the gerontocracy that runs America, I think, is worthy of conversation, perhaps another time. But Tiffany, your thoughts on this?
I mean, Dan has some really good points. So Tom Tillis specifically came out against the SAVE Act here in America, which is a very big deal because we would like voter ID. He just came out against that again this week. Ken Paxton beat Cornyn in his primary. Again, Paxton was a Trump-endorsed candidate. Cornyn wasn't. He's not upset about that either. He's pretty upset about that as well. So there's those two things going on at play. But what I will say is that, at the end of the day, Trump has not lost control of the party. This fund was set up for a variety of reasons. Yes, it was in response to President Trump being the victim of what we now have absolute hardcore evidence as, an attack, like a really malicious and illegal attack that cost him tons of money to defend. But there are people like the January 6ers. I know a couple of guys that they were put through a horrific court system battle that cost them $40,000, and these are just regular blue-collar workers that were more than anything in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they can't go back and pay more court fees to overturn and fight the battle they couldn't afford to fight in the first place. Not only that, looking at guys like John Eastman, who is an attorney here in the United States, who was a massive victim of lawfare. and was put through the ringer in every single state he held the degree at the bar in, and was allowed to practice in. He has gone through every possible horrible kind of court experience here. That cost all these people's money that they do not have and cannot afford, and has driven many, many Americans into bankruptcy. That's not fair, especially for people that have served their country or are doing what they think is right. It's not fair to have someone like a judicial activist judge that wants to go and attack these people to prove a point when they can't afford it. So I think that's what this fund is really for, and that's what President Trump is trying to do, is protect the people that can't afford to fight these battles on their own or have been so discouraged and dismayed by what they've gone through that they can't afford their lives.
Matthew?
I would say that January the 6th was almost certainly the most disgraceful episode in American politics of my lifetime. I could not believe what I was watching. It was absolutely outrageous. And perhaps even more outrageous than that was the fact that Trump pardoned people who behaved in that disgraceful anti-democratic way that shamed America on TV screens around the world. And if a penny of this fund were to go to people whom Trump pardoned when they had committed that crime against American democracy, well, shame on the President of America. And actually, I think he was talking about these very people in this quote that I'm going to read you now. He said, "I felt that they should be given compensation for what has been done to them," Trump wrote of his supporters, whom he described as a group of people treated so badly in our nation's history. I mean, I just find this
They were treated horribly.
absolutely appalling. We all saw the pictures. They shamed America.
Tiffany, I'll give you a right of reply on that.
Yeah, you cannot go by pictures you see on the internet, Matthew. That doesn't tell the whole story, and it certainly doesn't tell the truth for many of these people. A lot of these guys were held in isolation for up to 2 years. Many of them lost their entire everything, their families, their jobs, their careers, their reputation, based on facts that were not true. And the whole point is that here in America, you're innocent until you're proven guilty. But that was not what was going on for a lot of these people. And you can't look at that and pick and choose who you're going to apply justice to. That's what this is for.
Trump is the one who is picking and choosing. He mass pardoned people he saw as his supporters who committed crimes against your country and against your democracy. And as I say, that shamed America around the world. It's not about watching pictures on the internet. These scenes were beamed across the world in real time on television, and your country and your democracy took a massive hit as a consequence.
Well, can I come in at that? Because I think
you hold a third world election, you get a third world result.
Well, what a disgraceful comment.
Well, not
Charlie, I'll go to you.
Not only. Matthew, if you're right, Donald Trump was picking and choosing. And what caused some of the consternation is if you have, for example, here in the UK, the BBC picking and choosing parts of a speech that Donald Trump obviously didn't give, but splicing part of that speech together to present itself as if it was something more insightful in terms of inciting violence than what it actually was in terms of reality, which is why there's a legal case still, I believe, against the BBC here in the UK. So, if it is the case that, as Tiffany was saying, there are people that were just caught up who've had their lives affected, then maybe there is. If that is the only pot of money available, I don't know enough about the details, then that seems appropriate to me. But, I defer to Dan, actually, on this one. I think he sounded more, quite reasonable.
Dan thought it was, Dan, the man who's just said, Charlie, that this was a third world election, an election that was upheld repeatedly. Trump was the sorest loser in American history. It was an embarrassment. Just imagine for a second if when the Democrats lost the last election just now to Trump, if they played any sort of tricks or game playing that Trump attempted in trying to mislead the American population into thinking he'd been unfairly beaten, that he'd been defrauded of the presidency. Absolutely outrageous. The fact that you guys are somehow championing him still to this day just shows
we
how
have the
terribly
Democrat governor of
blinkered you
New
are.
Jersey out there talking about how illegals voted in the last election.
We actually
so
have
there's hardcore proof of voter shenanigans that were going on in that election.
And Chinese influence, actually. Over 220,000 questionable voters. We have Chinese influence that's been completely certified. We have many, many verifiable proofs of election fraud, and, you know, calling it fake isn't going to change the reality.
This is the big lie. It's alternative fact.
So no, I think two things can be true at the same time. Like, again, of course there was degrees of fraud in that election. There is fraud in every single election in every Western country. The question I'd have for you, Tiffany, is: are those 220,000 were they non-registered voters who voted? No, sorry, foreign voters, was it?
Yeah, so there is a combination where the concern was people that were dead. I mean, we had some people use their dog to vote. We had people that were illegal immigrants that were automatically registered to vote that are not even American citizens.
My question is, and obviously this is refuted in certain sectors, like, would that have been enough to swing the election, even if that is substantially right?
The real question is, I mean, presidentially, there's certain pockets and areas where maybe it would have swung one state in the direction of him that would have won us the electoral vote. It's possible. I haven't done the math on that, but what I will say is
you haven't done the maths on that, but you're still saying it.
Stop. One at a time. Tiffany.
Yeah. So no, I haven't broken it down by electoral vote by state. I haven't had the time. But what I will say is that on other levels, whether that's state governors, whether that's mayors, whether that's city councils, those all have very, very real impacts on every state, since we do have such strong states' rights. So, like, I'm from Arizona, a border state that has a massive immigration problem. Not only that, but we have the largest county in America, Maricopa County, where I live, and we have very unreliable voting systems that have only gone into place recently. I never had the problem growing up of not knowing who won the vote the night on the vote. We always knew before we woke up the next morning. Now we take, I mean, at this point, it's in months in some cases to get the final count. That is suspicious, it is not normal, and it reeks of problems that we are very thankful to now have a really wonderful guy in charge of our election integrity that's trying to fix things. But you look at states like California, they refuse to hand over their voter rolls to Harmeet Dillon. They refuse. The Harmeet Dillon and the feds are now suing California and Gavin Newsom for refusing to hand over their voter information, because we know how many people are probably fraudulently registered to vote on those rolls. So I do think that it's very possible in bigger states like California or Arizona that are swing states or that have a larger electoral count to make a massive difference on the presidential level.
All right. I would note that this has been refuted in quarters from the Democratic Party and other members of government. Matthew, your right of reply.
It's just nonsense. There may or may not be issues in the way that people vote in America. What has been consistently established is that election was won fair and square by Joe Biden. And what a coincidence it is that the only person who's been defrauded of the presidency is Donald Trump. A man, just to take one little example, who only yesterday said that hundreds of thousands of people had crossed from Morocco into that Spanish enclave, when we know as a fact that it was around 50 or 60,000. I'm afraid I wouldn't believe a word that comes out of his mouth, and the fact that you guys cleave to him in the pathetic way you do, I think brings further shame on America.
There's nothing pathetic about wanting a great leader.
And if you don't have fair elections, you don't have a country either.
You did.
All right. I'm getting bored of this conversation now. Still ahead on The Late Show Live, ladies and gentlemen. Elon Musk is reported to be jumping back into the political fray ahead of the 2026 midterms with a new field program to help elect Republicans in at least 8 states. But is this a matter of his money, his choice, or should the world's first trillionaire keep his money out of American politics? This is The Late Show Live on the People's Channel, GBNews.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Warm sunshine for many of us through today, though a little bit cooler than it has been earlier on this week. A few showers still for more northwestern areas as well. So a bit of a cloudier start across parts of western Scotland in particular. Some of these showers will push further east into eastern Scotland, some eastern areas of northern England. Perhaps the odd shower in the far north of Wales, but for many parts of England and Wales it should remain pretty dry through much of today. Plenty of sunshine as well. UV levels will be high and it will still feel quite hot in the sunshine, with temperatures reaching 26 degrees in the southeast, quite widely in the low 20s for more central areas of England. Tonight it remains pretty dry for much of the UK, even though showers tending to fade away. It's just the Northern Isles seeing a few lingering into the evening. So for much of Scotland, a dry night to come, but a breeze will continue, holding temperatures up a little bit higher across more western areas. Across the shelter, though, it will be another quite fresh night ahead. Plenty of clear skies. A bit of mist and fog could develop overnight as well. The sunshine may be a little bit hazier to end the day across the very far south of England in particular, but plenty of dry weather overnight. We've got a ridge of high pressure still with us. The winds pick up a little bit across the far north of Scotland to northerly winds, so that will bring quite a chilly feel to start the day on Sunday here. Elsewhere, plenty of clear skies. As I said, a bit of mist and fog. Towns and cities just about double digits, but rurally could be down into the mid single figures to start the day on Sunday, particularly across the north and east. There's a change on Sunday to wetter conditions by the end of the day, but lots of sunshine ahead of that. Perhaps a little less sunshine compared to Saturday for some of us, but it's going to still feel quite warm. We're starting to pick up some warmer air once again through Sunday, so temperatures climbing towards the higher 20s. And on Monday, it's set to be a little bit warmer once again. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Here at GB News, we made a promise to tell your stories. And on the 6th of August, we're marking 5 years of doing exactly that.
Celebrate with us by having your say. Join in the debates live on TV and radio.
And meeting your favourite presenters across the country, from Leeds to Aberdeen, from Belfast to Barry Island.
Plus, join me in Essex for our biggest live show of the year. Scan the QR code or visit gbnews.com/celebrate. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Well, Elon Musk is jumping back into the political arena ahead of the 2026 midterms with a new field program to help elect Republicans in at least 8 states. The Tesla and SpaceX CEO authorised his super PAC, America PAC, to spend a whopping $100 million to $120 million for a new field program focused on conservative voter turnout in the 2026 midterms. America PAC poured more than $250 million into Trump's re-election campaign in 2024, making Musk the biggest political donor in US history. So tonight, I'm asking, should the tech billionaire be free to pour his money into politics? Well, we're joined by Democratic strategist Richard Goodstein and author of The Leadership Genius of Elon Musk, Dennis Neal. Richard, I'll start with you. In one respect, this is a staggering amount of money. At the same time, staggering amounts of money going into political campaigns in America is nothing new. And of course, we've seen that on both sides of politics. So why should it be any different for Elon Musk?
Is 100 million, if you're a trillionaire, staggering? Actually, I'm not even sure that that's true. Look, it's a free country. Musk is a citizen. If he wants to spend his money that way, he's perfectly free to do that. However, and I know you know this, he did something like this in one single race in Wisconsin last year for a very important, pivotal Supreme Court seat. There was elections for that in that state. He put in $20 million, and that became an issue. A race that was thought to be very close was won by the candidate who was kind of backed by Democrats by over 10 percentage points, in part because she said, do you want Elon Musk's hand-picked candidate to win? And the voters in Wisconsin said, absolutely not. And I think what we're seeing in the primaries and the elections since Trump's been back in office is people don't like all this big money. I think one of the reasons it doesn't sit well with me that these socialists are doing so well is they're putting the spotlight on all this big money that's coming in. So I actually think in some respects, this could boomerang pretty badly on Musk. I hope it does. But frankly, I don't know why he's stopping at 100 million. He could be $1 billion, and it still wouldn't make a dent in his net worth.
Well, Dennis, to Richard's point, do you think that this could be counterproductive for the Republicans?
Oh, no way. I mean, this is such great news. And look at the timing of it, because it comes at a time when the Democrat Party in America is near bankruptcy. It just had to put up its building as collateral to borrow $15 million. Gee, once the billion stopped going out the door in USAID aid for some reason, I don't know, it stopped round tripping, I guess, and now the Democrats are poor. Now, Elon, remember, he said when he was mad at Trump, he was going to start a third party. Well, that flitted away, didn't it? And then he said he wasn't going to be involved in the midterms, and now we know that he is. But the thing is, Democrats never have a problem when George Soros is throwing hundreds of millions around into various campaigns, and his goals are to have prosecutors who won't put anyone in jail, whereas Elon Musk has far better goals in mind. I'm a fan of the guy, and I'm glad he's going to get involved. I hope it makes a difference. Interestingly, though, he's not going to back candidates, right? You might have read he's going to work on voter turnout. Now, in New York City, they just nominated a woman who's going to get into Congress. She's a Democrat Socialist of America member, okay? And she got this nomination that's a sure bet to win on just drawing 8% of the registered Democrat voters in her precinct. And this is because people just didn't get off the sofa. They didn't get out and vote.
I should just note that I imagine George Soros would dispute some of those claims. Please don't sue us, George. But Richard, I'll go back to you. It does seem interesting that, again, this conversation around money in politics does seem to pop up more when you have people like Elon Musk pumping money into the conservative side of politics, and yet you don't tend to hear the same complaints when there is not maybe the same, but comparable levels of money coming from Democratic donors and going towards, say, the Obama campaign or the Biden campaign.
Right. So again, if we're dealing in the real world, this notion of Soros throwing hundreds of $millions is an utter fiction. I mean, if we're dealing in the fictional world, tell me, and I'll make up numbers too. But if we're dealing in real numbers, the fact of the matter is there aren't Musks, there aren't Koch brothers families, there aren't families like that on the Democratic side. We've got, a few billionaires, and they're doing what they can, but they're not throwing around money like this. But again, in this climate that we're in this year, I think that this is going to be counterproductive. And I will say this, as you know, Donald Trump is at historic lows of presidential approval. Nobody in the history of polling has been this low at this point in his administration. I don't think any amount of money, Musk could spend his $1 trillion. I don't think that's going to change public opinion. He could knock on every single door in this country. It's just not going to make a difference because people are revolted by what they see. And again, we'll see, on November 5th, whether it's made a difference. I'm quite skeptical.
May I please counter and point out that Democrats are now at all-time lows in approval rating among the American public. Democrats have no agenda other than affordability that they don't know how to deliver. If you want affordability, cut taxes. Democrats only know that they hate Trump, and they're going to miss him so much when he's gone. And I'm glad
Dennis,
that Musk is in there.
Can I ask you on that, though? I'm sorry to interrupt, but is it a bad look that when the Democrats are talking about affordability, despite maybe not having particularly good plans to solve it, you have Elon Musk coming and throwing huge amounts of money into the political process? Are the optics there problematic for the Republicans?
I don't think there's any connection whatsoever. I don't think there's going to be a backlash against Elon. I think people will want to listen to what they have to say. I mean, let's enter the fray. Let's have the debate. The Democrat Party is getting taken over by socialists. And they're saying we have a very big tent. They don't realize that the socialists are going to turn on them. They're going to primary major incumbents, and they can't do anything about it. They're so scared right now. I feel for them, and I was registered as a Democrat for more than 40 years.
Can I make one quick point? The Democratic Socialists, Bernie Sanders, AOC, have never once flipped a seat from red to blue, from Republican to Democrat. Nowhere, no, not Senate, not House, nowhere. The moderates, the New Democrats, have done that 50 times. So this notion that somehow the Democratic Socialists have taken over the party, this is why if you look in...
Why aren't the moderates speaking up and speaking out and saying we are capitalists and we are proud to be capitalists?
I don't know how closely let me say something. I don't know how closely you follow U.S. politics, but in the politics I follow, the single biggest caucus, the single biggest group of Democrats in the House of Representatives are what they call New Democrats, pro-business, socially moderate Democrats. That's who will be when they're in the majority, and all indications are that they will be. That's who's going to be calling the shots. I know everybody in Trump's corner wants to say, oh, they're communists, oh, they're socialists. But that's just not what's happening, okay? The fact of the matter is, if you look at 1.5%, it's pretty sad.
All right, gentlemen, unfortunately that's all the time we have this evening, but thank you very much. I thoroughly enjoyed that conversation. Let's go to the panel now. I'll start in DC. Tiffany, I'll start with you. How do you feel about, I guess, maybe even taking a step back from Musk, how do you feel about, on principle, these vast sums of money being pumped via PACs into American politics? And again, whilst Musk may now be the biggest donor in this regard, it does happen on both sides. On principle, how do you feel about this?
It's a necessary evil. I mean, do I like it? No. Is it something we have to live with? Yes. You look at George Soros. The Soros family has pumped in billions and billions of dollars into elections both here and abroad for decades. We finally are in a position to start fighting back against that kind of, which really it is, influencing our elections in a positive way. And that's not with him, not with someone like Elon Musk or whoever it may be influencing or backing candidates directly, but increasing voter turnout, because what we really have right now in this country is apathy. A lot of people are burned out. There's a lot of division on both sides, whether it's with the Democratic Party and the Democratic Socialists of America, or the Conservative Party and, you know, the splintering into MAGA, and now the people being black-pilled. So at the end of the day, what we need is people to show up and understand the value and the privilege of their civic duty and to care, to get involved. A lot of the people that are winning seats that should not be holding political office because they are incompetent or do have darker and bad agendas for this country are people that are only winning because the people that should be voting didn't show up. I'm talking in the 20, 30 percentage points. That's the problem. So I'm all for voter, you know, increasing on either side.
Matthew, your thoughts?
I think America should do almost everything it can to step back from oligarchy and leave partisanship aside. Leave the fact that I stand firmly against so much that Elon Musk stands for. I think it's a malign presence on American and global politics. Leave that aside. Whoever these big donors are, if I were in charge in America, I would make sure that you significantly limit the amount of money any one individual or any one corporation can contribute to your democracy. Otherwise, they have a massively disproportionate impact on how your country is run.
Dan?
No, not at all. I love the First Amendment, and I love money in politics because it's not money that's going to win an election. It's going to be ideas that win an election. And so if it were money that won an election, Kamala Harris would have won after spending $1 billion against Donald Trump.
So you're going to ring up Elon Musk and tell him not to invest?
One at a time. Yeah.
So when it comes to Elon Musk, he's not spending money on politics. He's investing in innovation. He's investing in the future of mankind because he knows that if the Democrats are to win, then that means it's going to be stifled by the communists. And so he's investing in the future like any good businessman with $4 commas in his net worth is going to do.
You've literally just accepted that what Elon Musk is doing is trying to influence through money the future of your politics, and yet you say money isn't what wins it. Elon Musk, if he's one thing, he's
the future of the world, the future of mankind.
If Elon Musk didn't think it would be money well spent he wouldn't be spending that money. So you've just utterly defeated your own argument on live television, not just in America, but in Britain as well.
I don't think you know what your own argument is. I don't think you know what your own argument is, because Elon Musk is investing in the future because he knows that if the Democrats were to win, then all of this innovation, all of these ideas, all of this thing that can improve the economy and improve the world are going to go on. This isn't investing in politics. This is investing in the future of mankind.
Daniel, all you're
if
saying,
the Democrats are able to get power,
all you're saying is
go
that you share the vision of America that Elon Musk has. What you're also saying is that by investing his money, Dan, you accept that he's going to have an impact on politics and the future of your country. It's just a politics you happen to share. I'm saying leave aside partisanship, leave aside what you think or I think of Elon Musk. It is unhealthy for one individual or for a series of individuals to have that sort of impact. You say at the same time, Dan, that money has no impact, is not what wins elections, and then you accept that by putting money into it, Elon Musk indeed is influencing your democracy.
Right. It does not win elections. What it does is it allows people to put the ideas out there. It allows people to put their message out there so that the ideas that the conservatives have, the idea that we can have these innovations and expand the economy and go to the moon and go to Mars and do these amazing things are going to happen only if we have a free capitalist economy. If we have a socialist economy, we might as well just live out and thrive off the government and end up dying a slow and horrible, painful death.
At this point, we have someone who's going to be investing in the future of mankind. He's contradicted himself.
All right. Charlie's been very patient. Go on, Charlie.
Well, I think there's always going to be a situation where one party may or may not have more money than the other. So even if you try to limit the amount that some individual might be able to give, so say it's £1 million, for example, there might just be more individuals that want to give that lump sum to the other party. So I don't know how that sort of squares the circle or makes anything more fair. I think Elon Musk is entitled to spend his money where he wants, because I agree that at the end of the day, OK, he's one individual. The American people are not stupid, regardless of what political divide they're on. They'll know that he's given that money, just as they know about the Soros investments to the Democrats, for example. If they don't agree with the Democrats, the policies, the ideas, the person that is running as their candidate, they simply won't vote for them. I believe in the voter here actually being able to decipher. Why do people spend
money, Charlie? Why do they bother to spend money if you're saying it makes no difference?
Because political parties do need money to operate, to campaign, to run a campaign, for transport, for operational costs, for advertising, to help candidates get up and running, to print leaflets, to make adverts. They need the money to run a campaign. Whether it's successful or not is entirely up to the voter. I think the educated voter in the United States that is able to make up that decision perfectly well for themselves.
I think everyone's managed to litigate their points there. Let's move on. The Telegraph now is reporting that July is set to be England's driest on record. The Met Office has revealed a total of 5.6 millimetres of rain fell in England during this past month. The previous record was set in 1911 when 13.4 millimetres of rain fell. That was followed by July 1868 with 18.1 millimetres and 1869 with 20.2 millimetres. Dr. Emily Carlisle, a Met Office scientist, said provisional figures suggest this could be one of the driest Julys in nearly 2 centuries of records, which is particularly notable when coupled with the exceptional heat experienced so far this summer. It was also expected to be the hottest July in England and Wales on record. Let's go now to the panel. And Charlie, you were in a nice little role there. I'll stay with you. Look, number one, and I've got several friends who are from farming families back in Australia, and drought is an almost constant feature of life in parts of Australia, and I know how difficult it is for farmers, who are dealing with drought. Suicide rates amongst farmers are higher than the average population. It is incredibly tough. So number one, strength and love to anyone who may be struggling, in the farming community in the United Kingdom. I think what this says, and let's maybe park the climate change net zero conversation just for now and look at basically how I would argue the Starmer government really neglected the farming community. In many instances, some of their policies, particularly around inheritance tax, were seen as a tax on the farming community, when what you can see at the moment is that they are doing it tough.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Will. I mean, our farmers have had it really bad on the back of that inheritance tax increase, where farms, small farms, were all of a sudden family farms that have been there for generations, would then be caught in this tax trap. Where there was this huge standoff between our farming unions and the Treasury they were so far apart in terms of the farming community saying how many farms would be caught by that tax, and the government saying, oh, it's only a handful. Turned out actually that I think the farming unions were right on that one. So they faced a tough time. I struggle personally to understand, and this is how my small brain works here in the United Kingdom, where we're surrounded by water, how on earth we could suffer some of the droughts that we do, or how we have to impose hose pipe bans and the like. I know, the weather has been particularly difficult this year. We've seen wildfires start up, I think some through natural causes. I imagine some of them through a little bit of arson, or where people have been stupid, not putting out a cigarette butt in fields, or having outside barbecues that have started some of these wildfires, which has put pressure on our emergency services and the rest of it. But I struggle to see why we do have droughts, and we haven't built the infrastructure, as I say, as an island, to be able to cope.
Matthew, to Andy Burnham's credit, he recognised the toxic dynamic between his government and the pubs and hospitality sector. He's made some attempts to try and improve the relationships there. Some people have said that the support that he is offering is modest, but nonetheless it is support. Would he be wise to extend a similar type of olive branch to the agricultural community?
I think Burnham should work with everyone. He should be a Prime Minister for everyone. Don't forget that the Starmer government actually raised the threshold. So I think the threshold, they brought in a threshold of about £1 million, different for different setups, and then they raised it to something like £2.5 million. So they recognised that there was an issue there and that they probably got it wrong. Don't forget also that farmers had an exemption, an extraordinary exemption, and I have a huge respect for farmers. I know lots of farmers myself. I've seen them through my childhood growing up when we went to holidays in mid-Wales, just how hard, unbelievably hard they work, 365 days a year in some cases. But if you wanted to hand over your business, your family business that had been in the family for generations, you had to pay inheritance tax if it was above a certain level. If you want to hand over the family home, you have to pay above a certain level, you have to pay inheritance tax. So we have to recognise that farmers, there was an exemption there. Labour wanted to make sure that this wasn't exploited. I think they had they brought in too low a threshold too suddenly. They recognised that, they raised it. I'm sure Burnham will want to be a Prime Minister for British farmers as well as for everyone else.
Tiffany, is this evidence of climate change and as a result, do we need to drop everything and act?
No, I think it's evidence of overregulation. I mean, obviously you can't control the weather. I mean, unless there are conspiracy theorists out there and you think that you can. But what we really have is the British people are highly overregulated. They're completely overtaxed. You pay the highest property taxes in the world, for example. I think inheritance tax is robbery. I think you are robbing people after they've already paid a lifetime of taxes, and you're robbing their children of a future, and you're robbing them of actually living the life that their parents and grandparents and generations before them worked so hard to provide them. And looking at, you are surrounded by a body of water. That's true. So where are their filtration systems, and where are the plants, the water plants that can help these farmers during a horrific drought like this? Where are the air conditioning units that have been completely banned or overregulated due to quote unquote climate, problems? And there's 3,000 people dead this summer. What about that?
I just want to get Dan's thoughts because we're running a tad short of time.
Sure. When it comes to infrastructure, we need to have foresight, and you need to have the ability to look ahead, to anticipate problems and find your way out of it. That's the definition of leadership, and that's exactly what leaders need to do. Instead of overregulating, they need to find a pathway to deal with emergencies before they happen.
It's interesting, Tiffany, I'll just go back to that point that mitigation measures, when we talk about climate change, are so often, I think, overlooked. And as a result of that, we do get stuck in an overly ideological debate. Matthew, I can see you've been researching something and you wanted to drop it in. What is it?
No, I was just surprised what Tiffany said about Britain having highest property taxes, and I've looked it up, and according to AI, which obviously I would check if I were not on air, Tiffany's right.
Well, I wasn't expecting that.
Of course I'm right, Matthew. I do know things, believe it or not.
I'm glad we got to the end of 3 hours and we finally found something, Tiffany.
Is that highest property tax?
Oh, yeah, you've had a few. You've had a few.
I mean, second or third.
You've had a few.
Well, I think that's a lovely piece of conciliation to end on, but also an incredibly bracing statistic that this is apparently the highest property taxes in the world and something which we need to address. That's all we've got time for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me. I will be back tomorrow night on The Late Show Live, and of course, thank you to my panel, Dan, Tiffany, Matthew and Charlie. That's all we have time for on the People's Channel, GBNews.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Warm sunshine for many of us through today, though a little bit cooler than it has been earlier on this week. A few showers still for more northwestern areas as well. So a bit of a cloudier start across parts of western Scotland in particular. Some of these showers will push further east into eastern Scotland, some eastern areas of northern England. Perhaps the odd shower in the far north of Wales, but for many parts of England and Wales it should remain pretty dry through much of today. Plenty of sunshine as well. UV levels will be high and it will still feel quite hot in the sunshine, with temperatures reaching 26 degrees in the southeast, quite widely in the low 20s for more central areas of England. Tonight it remains pretty dry for much of the UK, even though showers tending to fade away. It's just the Northern Isles seeing a few lingering into the evening. So for much of Scotland, a dry night to come, but a breeze will continue holding temperatures up a little bit higher across more western areas. Across the shelter, though, it will be another quite fresh night ahead. Plenty of clear skies. A bit of mist and fog could develop overnight as well. The sunshine may be a little bit hazier to end the day across the very far south of England in particular, but plenty of dry weather overnight. We've got a ridge of high pressure still with us. The winds pick up a little bit across the far north of Scotland, so northerly winds, so that will bring quite a chilly feel to start the day on Sunday here. Elsewhere, plenty of clear skies. As I said, a bit of mist and fog. Towns and cities just about double digits, but rurally could be down into the mid single figures to start the day on Sunday, particularly across the north and east. There's a change on Sunday to wetter conditions by the end of the day, but lots of sunshine ahead of that. Perhaps a little less sunshine compared to Saturday for some of us, but it's going to still feel quite warm. We're starting to pick up some warmer air once again through Sunday, so temperatures climbing towards the higher 20s. And on Monday, it's set to be a little bit warmer once again. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates,
5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5.
You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by